Chapter 683. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. Dusk was everywhere, and the horizon was lit by a wisp of fire. Clouds curled around the mountains and rivers. In the ruined temple, a monk, a young man, and a small snake sat facing each other. The small snake tried to escape several times but was caught by the young man. The young man threw the small snake until it was dizzy. The small snake didn't run anymore and obediently curled up there. Sigh. The monk sighed. It's not that I don't want to teach you, but you can't learn those moves at all. Even if you learn them, you can't use their power. Gu Jiao said. You didn't even teach me and you know I can't learn them? Do you have internal strength? No. Do you know Qigong? No. The monk laughed. Isn't that enough? That set of fist techniques can only be unleashed by people with profound inner strength. Gu Jiao grabbed the small snake. The monk's expression changed and he stretched out his hand. Wait. I haven't finished speaking. Gu Jiao's movements paused. The small snake hung upside down in the air and cooperatively stuck out its harmless tongue. The monk calmed down and glanced at the red-tasseled spear beside the straw mat. Your weapon is a spear. I'll teach you a set of spear techniques. Oh, the monk also knows spear techniques. Gu Jiao's current spear techniques were taught by the old marquis. There were only a few moves in total, and there was only one move as a killing move. The old marquis chose that for her based on her situation at that time. In fact, with her strength recovered, that move was indeed not enough. The monk stood up and walked over to pick up the red-tasseled spear leaning against the wall. He walked to the open space outside the temple. Watch carefully. He pointed the spear to the ground and his eyes turned cold. His breath instantly circulated, as if there were invisible wind blades sweeping through the world. Gu Jiao clearly felt that the monk's aura had changed. In fact, when she thought about it carefully, this monk had always changed a lot. She couldn't sense any trace of martial arts from him, so she didn't find it strange when he fell into her trap the first time. However, the terrifying power he displayed when he killed Sky Wolf made him look like a completely different person. Gu Jiao really couldn't describe it. Gu Jiao couldn't. Perhaps, he was like a Buddha who had fallen into the demonic path. But now the Buddhist chi and demonic chi were gone. He danced with his long spear and stood in the heaven and earth. His body was full of righteousness, and even his pair of peach blossom eyes became especially serious. What kind of spear art is this? Gu Jiao muttered. After the monk finished his last move, he threw the spear to Gu Jiao and said, All right, it's your turn. This spear was very heavy. Wasn't he afraid that she wouldn't be able to catch it if he threw it over like this? It was unknown whether it was intentional or not, but the spear carried a trace of the monk's own strength. Gu Jiao almost couldn't catch it. She steadied herself and stabbed the spear heavily into the ground. Only then did she not fall to the ground. The monk slightly raised his eyebrows and said, Oh, you caught it. So you did it on purpose? Let's see how well you've recovered. If you don't have enough strength, then I can't teach you the next few moves. He said, Let's see how well you've recovered, not let's see how well you've recovered. The difference between these few words was like heaven and earth. He knew what she was like before she was injured. Then, could she think that he was already there when she was fighting against the 6 imperial guards from the Crown Prince's mansion 5 days ago? He had been secretly observing her, and only made a move when she couldn't take it anymore. Why aren't you making a move? Did you not remember? Then I'll show you again. No need. The spear art that the old duke taught Gu Jiao laid a very strong foundation for Gu Jiao. She could basically understand some of the complicated moves. The only problem was that her injuries had not healed. She was indeed lacking in strength, but she didn't need to kill people. It was enough for her to practice her spear. The monk stood at the door and looked at Gu Jiao without blinking. The first move. The first move was the simplest. It was not much different from the most important move that the old marquis had taught Gu Jiao. However, the spearhead was raised 2 inches higher, and the strength required to stab out increased by more than 20%. Gu Jiao took back the red-tasseled spear and adjusted her breathing. She said to herself, It looks simple, but I didn't expect it to consume so much strength. The monk took off his wine bag and drank a big mouthful. He looked at Gu Jiao calmly and said, "The second move." The strength of the second move was increased. Gu Jiao jumped up and stabbed the long spear from top to bottom. Her angle was exactly the same as the monk's. It was really surprising that she could imitate it to this extent after only seeing it once. After these two moves, Gu Jiao's strength was half gone. Her wounds began to hurt. The monk didn't intend to let Gu Jiao stop. "The third move," he said sternly. It seemed that ever since the monk started to play with the red-tasseled spear and watched her practice, the monk's aura was different from what she had seen before. The third move was a Chinese style. It had a trick to confuse people. It had high requirements for speed and flexibility of the body. Gu Jiao hadn't stopped practicing since she came to this world. Otherwise, her waist would have been broken. After this move, Gu Jiao was slightly out of breath. The monk looked at Gu Jiao with surprise. "You still have strength." Gu Jiao finished all the moves in one go. Although it was said to be all, there were actually only 5 moves. However, the difficulty of each move after that was multiplied. The monk murmured, "This girl, I originally planned to let you finish it in 3 sessions." Gu Jiao's legs were weak. She could fall down at any time, but she supported herself with the red-tasseled spear. She raised her hand and wiped the sweat on her forehead. She gasped, "Is there more?" The monk was stunned. "There is more." He paused as if he was hesitating. It was as if he had made a big decision. 3 moves. Gu Jiao was so tired that she was seeing stars. She didn't notice the hesitation in his eyes. She passed the red-tasseled spear to him. "I'll take a few breaths. You can start." Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to see clearly. The monk stood in the open space with the red-tasseled spear in his hand. The night wind blew and his robe fluttered. He stared at the sky. "I'm ready," Gu Jiao said. The monk didn't move. Gu Jiao tilted her head. "Monk." The monk held the red-tasseled spear tightly. "Since you want to learn, I'll teach you. But remember, you can't use this spear to do evil. You can't use it to hurt the innocent. Otherwise, I'll kill you with my own hands." Gu Jiao sat on the threshold and looked at him. "You're suddenly so serious. I'm not used to it." The difficulty of the last 3 moves couldn't be compared to the first 6 moves. Gu Jiao could see it, but she still couldn't perform it all. "Let's stop here today," the monk said. "Oh." Gu Jiao put away the red-tasseled spear. The two of them practiced for the whole night and didn't have time to eat. The monk went to the stream behind the temple and caught 2 fish to roast. He also went to the vicinity to pick some wild fruits. When he came back with a pile of wild fruits, only bones were left of the 2 roasted fish. Gu Jiao's cheeks were bulging. Her small mouth moved quickly as she tried to eliminate the evidence. The monk was furious. "Why did you finish it again? Couldn't you leave some for me?" Gu Jiao's cheeks were bulging. She looked like a little fat squirrel that was eating. She said vaguely, "I used up too much energy. I was so hungry that I couldn't hold it in." The monk was speechless. The monk went to catch 2 more fish. This time he didn't leave. He was determined to prevent someone from eating. The little snake was released by Gu Jiao. After all, it had nothing to do with it. The monk focused on roasting the fish. Gu Jiao sat on the hay. She took a cotton cloth from the small basket and carefully wiped the red-tasseled spear as if she was wiping a treasure. The monk looked at her wiping the red-tasseled spear and pursed his thin lips. Gu Jiao felt that he was sizing her up. When she looked at him, he had already looked away and continued to roast the fish. The monk had never asked her why she appeared in Zhao country, why she dressed as a man, and why she encountered the brocade guards from the crown prince's residence. Was he not curious about her at all? Or had he already? The monk coldly snorted. "Stop looking. It's useless. I won't let you eat." Gu Jiao's thoughts were interrupted. She paused and decided to ask him, "What's your name?" The monk didn't have a name. She naturally asked for his Dharma name. For example, Jing Kong was a Dharma name. However, Jing Kong liked this name. Even after he returned to the secular world, he was still called Jing Kong. After asking, Gu Gu Jiao secretly wondered what kind of Dharma name the monk would call her. In the end, she heard him say a word softly. Gu Jiao was stunned. Steamed? What steamed? Steamed rabbit or steamed pork ribs? The monk roared. Can't you think of anything else other than food? Gu Jiao, no, I've been starving for the past few days. The monk sighed. He picked up a withered branch and wrote a word on the ground in Yen language. Zhang. This word, it seemed that it wasn't his Dharma name. It was his secular name. The monk ended the conversation. It's late. Go to sleep. Gu Jiao. I want to eat fish. The monk. After eating another fat and juicy grilled fish, Gu Jiao rubbed her round belly and fell asleep contentedly. At night, Gu Jiao had a dream. After coming to Chengdu, she had more dreams than before. However, the interesting thing was that she basically forgot everything after waking up. In the dream, all the memories seemed to be strung together. For example, after coming to the dream, she remembered the courtyard full of bellflowers and the graveyard without a tombstone. Tonight, it was neither a courtyard nor a graveyard. Instead, it was a battlefield that stretched as far as the eye could see. Shimmering spears, armored horses, and blood stained the yellow sand. There were endless battles, and soldiers constantly fell. A bloody mist filled the sky with the color of blood. Above the thousands of bones, a man in silver armor was riding on a similarly armored black-winged horse. He held the reins tightly in one hand and a red-tasseled spear in the other. His silver armor was already covered with blood, but there was no sign of retreat in his eyes. He looked at the thousands of soldiers and horses in front of him and said word by word, "The sons of the Xianyuan family will never surrender even if we fight to the last man." The next second, the scene in the dream changed. It was still this man. He was wearing silver armor and standing in the camp. He looked at the officials opposite him and said coldly, "Rebel? So what if my Xianyuan family rebels? The heavens have wronged my Xianyuan family, so my Xianyuan family will go against the heavens." Ining. Ining. It was that man's voice. The scene changed again. His voice was especially gentle and doting in this scene. However, his appearance was too horrible to look at. He had been shot in the shoulder and 2 in the thigh. He lay on the ground with blood flowing like a river. He tried to support himself with both hands so that he could sit up. Beside him squatted a little girl who was only 2 years old. "Uncle, you're bleeding. You're bleeding a lot." He smiled as if nothing had happened and wiped the blood off his palm on his armor. Then he raised his hand and touched the little girl's head. "Big uncle isn't bleeding. Big uncle was just playing with Inin." The girl tilted her head as if she was trying to discern the truth in his words. Then she asked, "Uncle, does it hurt?" He smiled and said, "It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt at all. Inin, let's play a game, okay?" "What game?" the girl asked. He raised his head with difficulty and endured the tearing pain all over his body. He pointed at the small house in front and said, "Do you see that small house in front?" The girl nodded and said in a childish voice, "Inin sees it." He smiled weakly. "I'll count to 3. Run over there. Run very fast. Don't stop and don't look back. You should find a place to hide in the house. If you can make first uncle unable to find you, first uncle will buy you candy to eat." The girl hid in the darkness for a long time. It was so long that when she woke up, the sky was dark and then bright. She crawled out of the box with great difficulty and stumbled back with her short legs. The mountains of the past had become a sea of corpses. Her lonely little figure crawled over the corpses lying in pools of blood. "Uncle, where are you? Inin doesn't want to play with you. Inin doesn't want candy. Inin wants uncle." The girl raised her head and looked at the city wall. Gu Jiao said, "No." Gu Jiao's body shook and she opened her eyes. The monk sat cross-legged beside her and looked at her with a faint smile. "Did you have a nightmare?" It seemed like a nightmare, but when she woke up, she couldn't remember anything. There was only one scene. A man in silver armor was nailed to the city wall by a red-tasseled spear. Gu Jiao rubbed her chest. The monk looked and took something out of his wide sleeve. He threw it to her. "Here." "What is it?" Gu Jiao asked. "Candy," the monk said. "I don't like candy." Gu Jiao returned the candy to him. "Oh." The monk raised his eyebrows in surprise. How can there be someone who doesn't like candy? My little disciple loves it very much. Every time he's unhappy, I'll use candy to coax him. He'll definitely be happy. Gu Jiao asked him strangely, you have a disciple? What kind of disciple can survive 3 days in your hands? How tenacious must his vitality be? Gu Jiao didn't dream in the latter half of the night, and slept until dawn. Her body was fine. Even if the people from the Crown Prince's residence came to kill her again, she could at least escape. It was time to go back. Where's the monk? Speak of the devil. The monk walked into the ruined temple with a pile of fresh wild fruits. Just eat a little. We'll be on the road soon. Gu Jiao said. You're leaving. The monk said. You're not leaving? Gu Jiao said. I'm leaving. The monk said. Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and eat. Oh. Gu Jiao ate a few wild fruits. They were very sour. After filling her stomach, Gu Jiao packed her things. There wasn't much medicine left in the first aid kit. She had also thrown away the bow, but she could make another one. With Master Lu and Xiaoshan around, it wasn't difficult to make a bow. Gu Jiao carried the red tasseled spear and the small basket on her back. The monk stuffed the rest of the sour fruits into her small basket and said, Eat them to satisfy your hunger on the way. Gu Jiao glanced at him. You're too lazy to take them, so you gave them to me, right? The monk held the prayer beads in one hand. Ba. Shanzai. This poor monk has good intentions. Gu Jiao. I'd be a fool if I believed you. The two of them left the ruined temple. In fact, Gu Jiao wanted to go to the imperial mausoleum to check on the crown princess. However, it had been 6 days since the crown prince sent out the first wave of brocade guards. Everything that should have happened had already happened. Either the crown princess was fast enough to find the bodies of the brocade guards behind the broken bridge and rushed back to Chengdu before the second wave of brocade guards arrived, or the crown princess had already been killed. I'm going back to Chengdu. Where are you going next? Gu Jiao asked the monk. The moment the monk opened his mouth, a murderous aura came from behind him. The monk quickly turned around and shielded Gu Jiao behind him. He struck out a palm to meet the opponent's attack. The collision caused a crack to appear on the road. The monk looked at the empty path and sneered. Ha, you dare to sneak attack me from so far away. You're really something. Girl, you go first. Gu Jiao stuck her head out from behind him and asked. Can you beat him? If you can't beat him, I can stay and help you. If it was a guy who could be killed in one move, he would not have forced the monk to use his palm. The internal strength of that palm was much stronger than when he dealt with the 3 celestial wolves. The monk smiled carelessly and narrowed his peach blossom eyes. He's a bit tricky, but not impossible. I let you go first because I don't want that ox nose to see your face and think that you're with me. If he can't beat me, he'll find trouble with you in the future. Of course, if you have doubts, you can stay. Before he could finish his words, he turned his head and saw that Gu Jiao, who had wanted to help him a second ago, had already run away without a trace. The monk was speechless. Gu Jiao spent 2 days to rush back to Chengdu from Mount Guan. The people from the crown prince's residence did not know who killed the first wave of brocade guards. They found the ruined temple by following the clues at the scene. Before she and the monk left, they had erased all traces of the ruined temple. As long as she did not expose herself, she would not be discovered by the people from the crown prince's residence. Gu Jiao returned to the residence in the evening. Mistress Nan heard the sound of horse hooves outside the door. Without thinking, she walked over and opened the courtyard door. Jiao. These days, whenever there was the sound of horse hooves in the alley, Mistress Nan would come out to take a look. You're finally back. Mistress Nan looked around the alley and pulled Gu Jiao in. She closed the courtyard door and bolted it. She asked worriedly, Are you okay? Why were you gone for so long? I'm fine, Gu Jiao said. Is everything okay at home? Mistress Nan sighed. We're fine. It's just that Yen had a heart attack on the second night after you left. Fortunately, you left him some medicine. He had a fever for a night and was fine the next day. The second night after she left was when she was fighting with the brocade guards. She was injured, so Gu Yen was also uncomfortable. I'll go and see Gu Yen, Gu Jiao said. He just fell asleep. Mistress Nan and Gu Jiao went into Gu Yan's room together. On the bed, Gu Yan's breathing was shallow and even. His face was as pale as usual. Mistress Nan whispered, "Are you really okay? What happened?" Gu Jiao looked at Gu Yan on the bed and said to Mistress Nan, "I had a fight with the people from the Crown Prince's residence and encountered some trouble. I was delayed in the temple for a few days. The trouble has been solved. Mistress Nan, don't worry." Mistress Nan knew that she would only report the good news and not the bad. She asked, "Are you injured?" Gu Jiao denied. "I'm not." "Even if you were, you would not admit it." Mistress Nan had no choice but to change the topic. She said, "Luleng came several times. He just left this afternoon." She made her husband and little Jing Kong worried. Gu Jiao said, "I'll go to the city to find them another day." Mistress Nan said, "Then you can ask Xiaofeng to take you there. He also comes to ask about you every day." Gu Jiao said, "Okay. By the way, where are Xiaoshan and Master Lu?" Mistress Nan said, "They went to buy firewood. Are you hungry? I'll make something for you to eat." Mistress Nan went out of the room. Gu Jiao came to the bed, bent down and touched Gu Yan's forehead. Gu Yan slowly opened his eyes. Gu Jiao smiled gently. "I knew you were awake." Gu Yan's eyes flashed with tears. He looked at her without blinking. "You're lying." Gu Jiao opened her mouth. Gu Yan said, "You're injured." Gu Jiao knew that even if she could hide it from everyone in the world, she could not hide it from Gu Yan. Gu Yan pointed to the edge of the bed. "Sit down." Gu Jiao said, "I'm dirty." Gu Yan did not say anything. He just looked at her stubbornly. Gu Jiao sighed and sat down by Gu Yan's bed. Gu Yan put his head on her lap and hugged her waist. "Sister." "Yes. Don't go out for so long." "Okay." Gu Jiao came out of Gu Yan's room. Mistress Nan had also finished cooking the noodles. Mistress Nan put a bowl of steaming noodles with preserved meat and dried bamboo shoots on the square table in the central room. She asked Gu Jiao, "Is Yan asleep?" Gu Jiao nodded. "Yes, he's asleep. This time he was really angry. I had to coax him for a long time." Mistress Nan could not help but laugh. "It's good that you can coax him. You've been gone for a few days." Gu Jiao picked up her chopsticks and asked, "Did anything big happen in Sheng City during the days I was gone?" Mistress Nan thought for a while and said, "Something big. There was indeed one." Gu Jiao stopped slurping the noodles. Mistress Nan said, "The Crown Princess is back." The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that you can't find on the internet here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896/10740337. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. Chapter 684. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all the novels that you can't find online. At night, Master Lu and Gu Xiaoshan returned to the house with a cart of firewood. "What took you so long?" Madame Nan walked to the door and helped them carry the firewood. Master Lu quickly stopped her and said, "You leave it, I'll do it." "It's just a few bundles of firewood." Madame Nan didn't care. "But I can't let you carry it, right, Xiaoshan?" Master Lu knew that he couldn't persuade Madame Nan, so he pulled Gu Xiaoshan to help him. "Yes, madam." Gu Xiaoshan jumped out of the carriage and took the firewood from Madame Nan. Madame Nan glared at Master Lu. Gu Xiaoshan carried the firewood and glanced at the red-tasseled spear and small basket in the central room. His eyes lit up. Is my sister back?" Madame Nan smiled. "She's back, she's playing chess with old Master Meng in the backyard." Everyone in the family knew old Master Meng's surname, but no one connected him with the chess sage of the Six Kingdoms. After all, The chess sage of the Six Kingdoms was treated as a distinguished guest by the state preceptor hall. How could he be reduced to living under someone else's roof? Gu Xiaoshan was so excited that he wanted to put 2 chicken feathers on his head immediately. He ran to the backyard with a bundle of firewood. Sister. Gu Jiao had already washed up and changed into dry clothes. Her hair was half dry and half wet. Hearing Gu Xiaoshuan's voice, she raised her hand to push the disobedient hair behind her ear, and turned to Gu Xiaoshan. Xiaoshan. Gu Xiaoshan put down the firewood and looked at her from head to toe. Sister, why were you out for so long? We were so worried about you. Gu Jiao curved her lips. I was delayed by something. The academy took so many days off. Did anything happen to you? Gu Xiaoshan shook her head. Oh, it's nothing. I said you were sick and they wanted to come to see you, but I stopped them. Them? Gu Jiao was confused. Wu Fuzi Mu Qingchen Mu Chuan. Gu Xiaoshan recited more than 20 names in a single breath. This was because he only knew these people. There were many he didn't know the names of. Gu Jiao. Oh. Why was she so popular? Alright. Doll, wait a moment. I'll finish this game with your sister. Old Master Meng couldn't wait any longer. He had the account book in his hands. He had already played more than 20 rounds with Gu Yan. The little boy had to play all the rounds with him. Gu Xiaoshan scratched his head and said, Sister, I'll come find you later. Gu Jiao. Okay. Gu Jiao came back safely. The whole family was relieved. Madame Nan decided to cook something delicious tomorrow morning. However, she ran out of star anise and fennel. Madame Nan decided to go to the shop to buy some back. There was a shop that sold spices in the alley. It was only a few steps away. However, their shop was closed today, so Madame Nan had to go to the street to buy some. Master Lu was repairing the carriage at home. Halfway through he frowned. Why isn't Nan Xiang back yet? Xiaoshan, you fix it. I'll go take a look. Okay. Gu Xiaoshan took the tools from Master Lu's hand. Master Lu walked out quickly. At this time, Madame Nan had indeed encountered a bit of trouble. She had been blocked in another alley and had even been injured. Her veil was covered in blood. She covered her painful chest and raised her hand to wipe the blood from the corner of her mouth. She shot out 3 Tanghua needles. The man smiled coldly and raised his hand to catch her hidden weapons. Madame Nan's face changed. The man looked at the Tanghua needle in his hand and sneered. It's actually dipped in poison. You've become much more ruthless than before. Unfortunately, you're no match for me now. At the end his smile turned cold. He flicked his finger and shot the 3 Tanghua needles back at Madame Nan. Madame Nan's eyes widened. The speed was too fast. She couldn't dodge at all. Suddenly, a small figure dashed over from behind Mistress Nan. With a whoosh he grabbed Mistress Nan and pulled her to the side. The 3 Tanghua needles were nailed to the ground. At the same time, Gu Jiao's spear touched the ground. She jumped up and stabbed the other person's heart. The other person tried to grab the red tasseled spear. Unexpectedly, this was a feint. The spear suddenly changed direction and swept towards his lower body. The other person's eyes trembled. He stepped on the ground and flew up to the roof. He steadied himself and looked at the young man in the alley with his black hair dancing. The young man was holding the red tasseled spear. He raised his head and looked at him coldly. His eyes were cold and untamed. That spear technique earlier. He frowned and muttered softly. Then he smiled faintly. Nan Xiang, this is the expert you've invited? I have to say that this little fellow is out of my expectations. But even so, he's not my opponent. Take this. Senior brother. Madame Nan hurriedly walked forward and stretched out her arm. She shielded Gu Jiao behind her. Don't hurt him. Senior brother? Gu Jiao looked at the man on the roof again. The sky was too dark. His figure was shrouded in the darkness. Gu Jiao couldn't see his skin color, but she could still make out his facial features. This person had a pair of malicious eyes. His appearance could be considered good, but when paired with his eyes, there was an inexplicable sense of evil. Madame Nan, stand back. Gu Jiao pressed down on Madame Nan's arm and fearlessly walked forward. She pointed her spear at him. Come down and fight with me. The other person was slightly stunned. He obviously didn't expect the young man to be so fearless. But very quickly he laughed. Little junior sister, I haven't seen such an interesting person in a long time. Since he calls you Madam Nan, then he can be considered as half a martial nephew. Forget it, I only heard that you came to Sheng City, so I came over to say hello. I didn't want to do anything to you. You were too nervous and attacked me first. Madam Nan gritted her teeth. Shameless. All right, I've said my greetings. I should go now. Goodbye, junior sister. After saying that, he smiled coldly and used his qinggong to disappear into the night. Gu Jiao turned around and reached out to support her forearm. Madam Nan, you're injured. Madam Nan waved her hand. It's just a small injury. I'll be fine after a few days. Why are you here? Gu Jiao said. You didn't come back, so we came out to look for you. Master Lu also went to look for you. He probably went in another direction. Madam Nan panted slightly. Let's go back. Gu Jiao held the red-tasseled spear in one hand and supported Madam Nan with the other. The two walked out of the alley. Madam Nan smiled bitterly. I didn't tell you about me in detail before. Do you blame me? Gu Jiao shook her head. I didn't tell Madam Nan about me either. Madam Nan smiled. She didn't want to compare who had more secrets with her. The person just now was called Qi Xian. He was the direct disciple of the Tang sect. The Tang sect is a Jianghu force outside the 6 countries. I used to be a member of the Tang sect. Later, I was dissatisfied with the marriage arranged by the Tang sect for me. If I still had my martial arts, Qi Xian wouldn't have been able to hurt me today. Gu Jiao suddenly understood. I see. No wonder Madam Nan's poison and hidden weapons are so powerful. Madam Nan shook her head slightly again. These two things are actually the worst for me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have destroyed my martial arts. I would have destroyed my own hands. When it comes to hidden weapons and poison, Qi Xian is far above me. Gu Jiao asked doubtfully. Then Madam Nan said. My martial arts are more powerful. Back then, the Tang sect had a forbidden technique. Originally, the disciples were not allowed to practice it. But later, for some reason, the sect leader decided to let us direct disciples try it. In the end, I was the only one who learned it. Maybe because of this, I was forced to marry the sect leader's son. Speaking of this, she paused and smiled. These are all things in the past. My martial arts are gone, but it's not bad to be able to live a carefree life. Then why did he want to kill you just now? Gu Jiao didn't believe that he just came over to say hello. She could feel such a strong murderous aura. Madam Nan said. He wanted to force me to tell him the method to learn the forbidden technique. Sigh, how would I know the method? I just learned it and learned it. Who knows why they are so stupid? Gu Jiao. Thinking of something, Gu Jiao said. He just said that he heard that Madam Nan came to Chengdu. Madam Nan sighed. Do you still remember the steward surnamed Liao from the State Preceptor Hall? The one we asked him to take you into the State Preceptor Hall through the back door? Gu Jiao had some impression of him. The one who was kicked out by the Horse King? Madam Nan said, that's him. He used to be an outer disciple of the Tang sect and knew us. I think he should be the one who leaked my whereabouts to Qi Xian. But I really didn't expect Qi Xian to come to Chengdu. This is against the rules of the Tang sect. Since the last sect leader, the Tang sect doesn't easily enter the world. Suddenly, Madam Nan thought of a possibility. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896428226/1073827005. HTML Genius memorized this site's address in a second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. Chapter 685. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. All the novels that can't be found online are available here. On the way back, Gu Jiao and Madame Nan, Master Lu came looking for them. He saw Madame Nan being supported by Gu Jiao and her veil was stained with blood. His heart skipped a beat. "Ah Xiang, what's wrong with you?" Nan Xiang looked at him angrily. "Don't make a fuss. You're scared out of your wits." Master Lu panicked. "No, you're vomiting blood. What the hell is going on? If you don't want to talk, let Jiao Jiao talk." Gu Jiao looked at Madame Nan. Madame Nan sighed. Okay, don't make things difficult for the child. I met Qi Xian." Master Lu was stunned. "Which Qi Xian? Your former senior brother?" Madame Nan said, "That's him." Master Lu was shocked. "He came to Chengdu? Aren't the disciples of the Tang sect not allowed to leave the Tang fortress at will?" Madame Nan said, "His appearance is indeed against the rules of the Tang sect, but that's between him and the Tang sect. It has nothing to do with me." Master Lu asked, "He's not here to take you back?" Madame Nan shook her head slightly. "No, he's here to interrogate us about the forbidden technique. He could have continued to fight with Jiao Jiao just now, but he didn't. I guess he has more important things to do and can't stay with us all the time. He won't come in a short time." Master Lu looked doubtful. "You know him so well?" Madame Nan smiled bitterly. "He's been my senior brother for many years. I know him well. Don't worry, let's go back." The three of them returned to the house. Madame Nan took some pills for internal injuries and went back to her room to rest. Gu Jiao also went back to her room. She lay on the bed and thought about the fight with Qi Xian just now. She could feel that Qi Xian was an out-and-out expert, and he was the type that she had never come into contact with before. First, it was the beautiful monk, then the troublesome ox-nose who dared to sneak attack the beautiful monk, and now Qi Xian. It was getting more and more lively. The trip to the Yin Kingdom is really not simple. "Sis, are you asleep?" Gu Xiaoshuan's voice came from outside the door. Gu Jiao sat up and opened the curtain. "Come in." Gu Xiaoshuan pushed the door open and went to Gu Jiao's bedside. She handed her something. Gu Jiao took it and looked at it. It was a wooden ball the size of a baby's fist. "This is mechanical ball, for you to protect yourself." Gu Xiaoshuan scratched his head and chuckled. "I've modified the mechanism that Master taught me to make. It's similar to how you use your black fire pearl. You just have to throw it out. The ball will trigger the mechanism, and the poison needles inside will shoot out from every hole." Gu Jiao looked at the ball and said, "This ball is full of holes. It can attack from all angles." Gu Xiaoshuan, although he didn't understand what his sister was saying, it seemed like she was praising him. Gu Xiaoshuan opened his other hand and took out a small ball cover. "Just in case if you accidentally drop it and hurt yourself, you'll be fine with this cover." Gu Jiao smiled and said sincerely, "Xiaoshuan is really good." Gu Xiaoshuan blushed. "This is just a basic mechanical ball. Sis, you can use it for now. If I can make better ones, I'll give them to you." Gu Jiao. "Okay." The next day, Gu Jiao, who had been absent for many days, finally went to the academy. As soon as she entered the classroom, a group of people surrounded her. Zhou Tong and Zhong Ding squeezed at the front. The two of them asked in unison, "Lulang, are you okay?" Gu Jiao was still not used to being surrounded like this, but looking at the pairs of small eyes full of concern, she did not push them away. She said, "I'm fine. I'm cured." Zhong Ding said, "Gu Xiaoshuan said that you were seriously ill and couldn't get out of bed for a few days. We were all scared and wanted to see you, but he said that you had acne and it was contagious. We'd better not go." Gu Xiaoshuan himself had acne, but he did not forget to use his experience to help her lie. Zhou Tong said with lingering fear, "Acne is very dangerous. You're lucky to be able to survive." Gu Jiao said, "It's okay." Mu Qingchen did not come today, but Mu Chuan, Yuan Xiao, and Zhao Wei heard that Gu Jiao was coming to class and hurried over from their own classrooms. The class had not started yet. The three of them came in through the back door of the classroom. "Excuse me, bro," Yuan Xiao said to Zhou Tong, who was sitting in front of Gu Jiao. "Oh." Zhou Tong did not dare to provoke the people from Team Ju, so he quickly moved aside. Zhao Wei stared at the student next to him. "We're still short of a seat, bro." That person hurriedly left with his bag. The two of them sat in front of Gu Jiao and turned to stare straight at Gu Jiao. Mu Chuan sat down on the seat that originally belonged to Mu Qingqian on Gu Jiao's left. The three of them stared at Gu Jiao with 6 eyes. Gu Jiao closed the book that she was halfway through. What's wrong? It's like you're looking at a monkey. You've lost weight, Mu Chuan said. Yeah, Gu Jiao said faintly. Mu Chuan whispered. Do you really have acne? Gu Jiao said seriously, yes. Mu Chuan suddenly reached out and touched Gu Jiao's forehead. After that he touched his own. It's not hot anymore. You've recovered quite quickly. My fourth brother had acne when he was young, and was sick for more than 10 days. Gu Jiao said without changing her expression. I recover quickly. The three of them exchanged glances. Zhao Wei looked at Yuan Shao. Go ahead. Yuan Shao looked at Zhao Wei. Go ahead. Mu Chuan raised his hand. Forget it. Stop arguing. I'll do it. Zhao Wei and Yuan Shao were speechless. We're not arguing. Gu Jiao looked at the three of them strangely. Mu Chuan cleared his throat and said seriously. The three of us came to you not only to see you, but also to bring you 2 pieces of news. One is good news and the other is bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? Gu Jiao said without hesitation. The bad news? The three of them felt awkward at the same time. Mu Chuan braced himself and said, well, while you were sick, we had a competition with Canaan Academy. Yuan Shao said hurriedly. What do you mean by while you were sick? It was yesterday. Gu Jiao looked at the three of them and said. The bad news is, Mu Chuan said with shame. We lost. We failed to live up to your expectations. We didn't fail you. We didn't fail you at all. You're all heroes. I'm proud of you. Gu Jiao said with bright eyes. What's the good news? I got 10,000 taels, but there's still good news? Could it be that there's an additional 1,000 taels of gold? Mu Chuan straightened his back and said. The good news is that even though we lost, the people of Canaan Academy finally agreed to exchange rewards with us after my hard work in persuading them. We can go and see the king soon. Ha ha. Aren't I awesome? Gu Jiao threw a punch and Mu Chuan's head fell onto the table. Awesome my ass. Who the hell wants to see the king? Give me back my gold. For the whole day, the murderous aura in the back row was particularly strong. Gu Jiao sat in her seat with a dark face. The whole classroom became her small battlefield. The students of Clear Heart Hall collectively held their books and trembled. On the other hand, Xiao Heng had just sent little Jing Kong to Lingbo Academy. He had applied for leave from Songlan Academy. He had good grades and was the top student in every subject. He was the most promising student in the academy. Even if he applied for leave for several days, none of the teachers rejected him. He wanted to go to the outer city to see if Gu Jiao had returned. After sitting in his carriage, he changed back into his own clothes and said, Let's go out of the city. The coachman was a servant he bought. He knew that Xiao Heng was a man and knew that he must be going out of the city through the southern gate. The coachman drove the carriage to the south. When they passed by an old shop, Xiao Heng said to the coachman, Stop for a while. I'm going to buy something. Yes. The coachman stopped the carriage by the roadside. The coachman wanted to say that he could buy something, but according to his observation, his young master would always choose the things he bought for the people around him. Xiao Heng was going to buy dried meat for Gu Jiao. The dried meat in this shop was very suitable for Gu Jiao's taste. There were not many people in the queue at this time. Xiao Heng ordered a bit of each of the 2 flavors. After the spicy flavor was sold out, the boss went to the back to get new ones. Young master, please wait for a moment. It will be ready soon. Xiao Heng waited patiently. A few people waiting for the dried meat came one after another. A young scholar said, Hey, have you heard? The crown princess is back? His companion beside him said, She's back? Why didn't I know? A middle-aged man came over and said with a smile, She didn't put up the crown princess's guard of honor. Of course you didn't know. Speaking of which, isn't she too feminine? Didn't the king depose her long ago? He even issued an imperial edict. The young scholar lowered his voice slightly. But I heard that the king's original words were to bring the crown princess back. Mouth cough. The middle-aged man covered his mouth. What he wanted to say was that the king probably had a loose tongue, right? The crown princess had been deposed to be a commoner. Now there was no crown princess in the Yen kingdom, only the crown prince. As they were talking, a carriage suddenly came slowly from the long street behind them. The carriage was wide and was pulled by 6 horses. There were 4 guards on each side of the carriage. There weren't many imperial bodyguards, but 6 horses was the standard of the imperial family. Xiao Heng heard the middle-aged man beside him gasp. It's the crown princess. Perhaps he did not expect them to speak of the devil. Or perhaps he was too surprised. Everyone around heard him call out the crown princess. Everyone rushed towards the carriage. There were too many people. Xiao Heng did not plan to join in the fun at this juncture. He took the dried meat from the boss and turned to leave. Unexpectedly, the people who wanted to see the crown princess were so excited that they knocked him out. He was caught off guard and fell in front of the carriage. Digression. It's the end of the month. Look in your pocket. Do you still have a monthly ticket? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that you can't find online are all here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896/107382476. HTML Genius remembers this site's address in a second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion mobile reading website. Chapter 686. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more frequently. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. Xiao Heng never expected that he would fall out of the crowd. How long has it been since he encountered such a thing? When he encountered robbers, the robbers would be smashed to death by a plaque. When he encountered thieves, the thieves would be knocked away by a passing carriage. Could it be that he would be unlucky again after changing back to men's clothes? If he was trampled by the horse's hooves, he wouldn't even know how he died. Fortunately, because the crowd flocked to see the crown princess, the road was narrow and the carriage was forced to slow down slightly. He still had time to get up and leave. Xiao Heng supported himself with his hands on the ground and endured the pain in his knees to stand up. But as soon as he took a step, he stepped on something and slipped, falling down with a thud. He fell flat on his face. This time it was really... Oh no. The coachman really didn't expect that this person would fall down again after getting up. I can't slow down even if I reduce the speed. Besides, who's to blame if I brake too fast and throw the crown princess out? The guards lined up on horseback to protect the carriage on both sides, but they didn't have time to rein in their horses. At the critical moment, a blue figure jumped up from the front and flew over everyone's heads. The distance was very far, but he arrived in front of the carriage in the blink of an eye. He didn't stop. He quickly reached out his slender and powerful hand, grabbed Xiao Heng from the ground, and rushed forward with a whoosh. Because he was too fast to save people, he couldn't stop. He's going to hit the crown princess carriage. Oh no, the crowd didn't dare to watch. However, what they were worried about didn't happen. He suddenly jumped up, grabbed Xiao Heng, and flew over the roof of the crown princess carriage. The two of them landed on the street behind the carriage. In the crowd, someone recognized this person and exclaimed, "It's Taoist Qingfeng." It's really Taoist Qingfeng. Taoist Qingfeng came down the mountain. Taoist Qingfeng hasn't come down the mountain for 5 years, right? He's still the same as before. He hasn't changed at all. Taoist Qingfeng is so handsome. In the attic, a girl clutched her handkerchief and said infatuatedly. The other girl beside her snorted disapprovingly. What's so handsome about a cow's nose? There was no woman in his eyes at all. I think that the young master he saved is even more handsome. Of course not. Taoist Qingfeng is the most handsome. That young master is the most handsome. Xiao Heng steadied himself, and the other party let go of his hand. Then Xiao Heng looked at the other party. When he heard someone call him Taoist, he thought it was an old Taoist, but unexpectedly, it was a young man in his 20s. The young man wore a blue Taoist robe and had a sage-like bearing. His appearance was like jade, and his gaze was chilly. His entire body seemed to emanate a Tao insight that was isolated from the world, causing all the clamorous noise of the mortal world to instantly become silent around him. Actually, it wasn't that the environment was quiet. It was just that being by his side made her feel at peace. Xiaoheng cupped his hands and thanked the young man. "Thank you for saving me, Taoist." The young man seemed to have a sage-like bearing and was unapproachable, but in fact, he didn't put on any airs. He cupped his hands and returned the greeting to Xiaoheng. "You're welcome." It was a voice that was otherworldly and otherworldly. After he finished speaking, he turned and left. It was as if he hadn't done anything remarkable. He went in the opposite direction of the crown princess's carriage. Well, he came from the east, so it was normal for him to go west now. Xiaoheng looked at his back, then turned and looked at the west end of the long street. The crown princess's carriage and guards had already left decisively, gradually disappearing into the long street. In contrast to Taoist Qingfeng's bravery, the crown princess's indifference aroused a burst of anger among the people. So many years have passed, but she's still as domineering as before. The person who spoke was the middle-aged man who had lined up in front of the meat shop. He was older, so he had heard more about what had happened in the past than the young people present. So a young man asked him, "Was the crown princess very domineering in the past?" The middle-aged man clicked his tongue and said, "In the early years it wasn't rare for a carriage to hit someone and kill someone on the street. If she hadn't been born the crown princess, and had the support of the empress and the Xianyuan family, she would have been deposed by the monarch many times. Yes, I saw it with my own eyes. She killed a child on the street. That child was only 5 or 6 years old. He was only this tall. Come to me. Oh, what a sin. Why do you think she came back so quickly?" The crowd's discussion didn't stop. Xiaoheng knew the power of rumors, but he couldn't tell whether they were true or false. The crowd didn't disperse so quickly, but it wasn't as lively as before. The people around him then hurried away, each going about their own business. Xiaoheng stood on the long street, looking in the direction where the crown princess's carriage had left. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but the moment he fell in front of the carriage, he seemed to feel a gaze from the carriage that couldn't be ignored fall on him. The dried meat he had just bought was already dirty from the fall, so Xiaoheng went to buy new dried meat. He felt that there shouldn't be anything else to do, but something unexpected happened. The moment he turned around with the dried meat, he ran into Nangongli, who had come out of the iron shop across the street. Nangongli saw Xiaoheng with a glance. The carriage was only a few steps away from Xiaoheng, but Xiaoheng didn't get on the carriage. He walked back and entered the shop that sold dried meat. Nangongli's brows furrowed. "General, what's wrong?" "The carriage is ready," the guard on the side said. Nangongli looked deeply at the shop. "I saw someone. Have them wait for me here. Go around and block the back door of the shop that sells dried meat. Don't let anyone go out." "Yes." The guard quickly crossed the street and went around the alley to the back door of the shop. Nangongli walked into the shop. Nangongli's right sleeve was empty, so it was hard to avoid attracting attention as he walked. The owner of the dried meat came over and asked politely, "Sir, are you here to buy dried meat?" In fact, this shop wasn't opened by him. He only rented the space near the entrance. There was a restaurant inside the shop. Nangongli ignored him and walked towards the lobby. Nangongli looked fierce and had a cold aura. The owner of the dried meat didn't dare to pester him, and continued to sell dried meat in front of the stall. Nangongli wandered around the lobby and didn't find Xiaoheng. He went to the back door and asked the guard, "Did anyone go out?" The guard shook his head, replying to the general, "No one went out after I guarded here." Nangongli searched the entire restaurant, even the kitchen and the toilet, but he didn't see Xiaoheng. Nangongli was sure that he didn't see wrongly. That person just now was Xiaoheng. "Have you come to the Yin Kingdom, Xiaoheng? There's a path to heaven, but you don't take it. There's no door to hell, but you barge in. If you hide in the Zhao Kingdom, I can't do anything to you. But you're in my territory, so don't blame me for settling old and new grudges with you." "General." The guard looked at Nangongli, who had a strange expression, puzzled. Nangongli said proudly, Go and check which Zhao Kingdom people came to Chengdu recently. I'm going to the Crown Prince's mansion. The guard saluted and said, Yes, General. Nangongli paused and thought of something. He smiled coldly. Especially investigate these two names, Xiao Lulang and Gu Jiao. In Tianqiong Academy, all the students in the Clear Heart Hall had an indescribable day. After school, they didn't dare to stay for a moment and left the classroom like a swarm of bees. When Gu Xiaoshan came to find his sister, he found that the classroom was empty. He scratched his head. Huh? Why is everyone eating so enthusiastically today? Gu Jiao handed the bag of books to Gu Xiaoshan. I'm going out. I won't go back to eat. Going out again? What should I say if Gu Yan asks? Gu Xiaoshan wasn't afraid of anything. He was only afraid that Gu Yan would ask him. Gu Jiao said, Just say that I'm going to Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, and will be back tonight. When he heard that she was only going to Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion, Gu Xiaoshan was relieved. Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion was where Gu Chengfeng was staying temporarily. It was very safe there. He agreed. Okay. Sister, go early and come back early. Gu Jiao nodded. Okay. Gu Jiao came out of Tianqiong Academy and hired a carriage to go to Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion. She walked the rest of the way. Along the way, she was very vigilant. After making sure that no one was following her, she entered Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion from the back door. Su Fengxian was sitting in the backyard scolding Gu Chengfeng. Humph. His temper is really bad every day. One moment this master comes, he won't see him. The next moment that master comes, he won't see him. Who does he think he is? Heavenly Emperor. Yinxing weakly pulled Su Fengxian's sleeve. Su Fengxian impatiently shook off her hand and continued to complain. What? Did I say something wrong? Don't I need money to open such a big theater? If he dares to embarrass the guests again tonight, I'll kick him out of here. Before she could finish the last word, Su Fengxian felt a shadow looming over her head. She looked up. Oh my God! She was so scared that she fell off the stool and sat on the ground. Yinxing braced herself and helped her up. She gritted her teeth and whispered, Why didn't you remind me that he was coming? Yinxing felt wronged. I did remind you, but you didn't listen. Su Fengxian secretly cursed and forced out a flattering smile. Oh, the young master is here. Please sit down. Please sit down. Yinxing. Serve tea to the young master. Yes. Yinxing hurriedly went to check. Su Fengxian called out to her again. Wait, you stay here. I'll go make tea. She would rather work than stay and suffer this young man's anger. Gu Jiao didn't seem to have any intention of denouncing her. She said, I'll look for him, and went upstairs. Su Fengxian's body went soft, and she sat down on the stool. She raised her hand to wipe the cold sweat on her forehead and said with lingering fear, Scared me to death, scared me to death. I didn't see anyone at the door just now. How did he grow out? Gu Jiao went upstairs. Gu Chengfeng was doing very well in the theater now. Not only did he have his own luxurious room, he also had a few servants that he could order around. Su Fengxian was complaining, but she really couldn't bear to kick out Gu Chengfeng, this money tree. Gu Chengfeng was memorizing the script. These were all the scripts written in the old chancellor's storybook. The story was also from the storybook, commonly known as the play within the play. One couldn't help but admit that the plays written by old chancellor were indeed marvelous. They were twisted and bizarre, gripping the heartstrings of the audience. Most importantly, the ending of every play would be stuck in everyone's throat, making one's heart itch and unable to sleep. They couldn't wait to watch the next play. Just like that, Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion's business became better. With more customers coming, it was naturally easier for Gu Chengfeng to inquire about information. However, he didn't plan to inquire about information tonight. He wanted to see if that lass had returned. Who knew that just as he put down the booklet in his hand, Gu Jiao walked into the room. You. Gu Chengfeng only came back to his senses after a while. He sized her up and hurriedly walked over to close the door. He sat down at the square table with Gu Jiao and asked in a deep voice, When did you come back? Why were you gone for so long? Gu Jiao said, I came back yesterday. I ran into something and was delayed. Something? Gu Qingfeng grabbed her hand and rolled up her sleeves. Looking at the bruises on her arm, he said in a bad mood, "This is something?" So many days had passed and there were still bruises. It could be seen how swollen it was when she was injured. Gu Jiao pulled her hand back. "Think of a way to contact Xiaoheng and tell him that I'm back safely." Gu Qingfeng snorted. "Did you come here just to tell that guy that you're safe?" "Not really," Gu Jiao said. Gu Qingfeng's eyes lit up. "Say it quickly and tell him that you're safe too." "Also, I wanted to ask you what you've heard recently," Gu Jiao continued. Gu Qingfeng's face darkened. Opera houses were popular in Chengdu. It was easier to survive in an opera house than a brothel. This was also the reason why Su Fengxian changed the brothel into an opera house. Those who went to the brothel were all men, but those who came to watch opera were all men and women. If the opera was good, even the eunuchs in the palace would come to support it. The inner city was very strict, and it was easy to run into acquaintances. Over time, the outer city became the best choice for guests. These days, Gu Qingfeng really did find out a lot of information. Chengdu has been a lot livelier recently. The crown princess has returned. Some disciples and aides of aristocratic families who were traveling outside have also returned. I know of Daoist Qingfeng from the Feng family and Qi Xian, the master of Han from the Han family. Gu Jiao heard a familiar name. Qi Xian? The Qi Xian from the Tang sect? This time, it was Gu Qingfeng's turn to be surprised. "How do you know?" "Oh," Gu Jiao replied. "I've fought him before." Gu Qingfeng was shocked. You fought with him? You were injured by him? You're not disabled, are you? That guy is not to be trifled with. It's said that his martial arts are very high. Even the state preceptor hall has to be polite to him. It's all Qi Xian's credit that Han can become the #1 master of his generation in Chengdu." Gu Jiao shook her head. "No, he didn't hurt me. He left after 2 moves." Gu Qingfeng asked in confusion, "Then how do you know he's Qi Xian?" Gu Jiao said, "Madame Nan said that she knows him." Gu Qingfeng had been in contact with Madame Nan so many times that he probably knew that the other party had a background. He curiously asked, "Who is Madame Nan?" "Qi Xian's former junior sister," Gu Jiao said truthfully. Gu Qingfeng's mouth suddenly opened wide. Qi Xian's former junior sister. Didn't that mean she was also from the Tang sect? "Girl, what kind of master and mistress did you find for Gu Yan?" Gu Jiao hadn't been in contact with the Feng family for the time being, so she naturally didn't have much interest in Daoist Qingfeng. In contrast, she cared more about Qi Xian. Qi Xian is actually an aide of the Han family. That's good. They were jackals of the same tribe. It wouldn't be difficult to fight in the future. Thinking of the reason why Gu Jiao left Chengdu, Gu Qingfeng asked, "Last time you said you wanted to confirm something. Did you confirm it?" "No. She didn't see the crown princess." Gu Qingfeng. "Is it related to Xiaoheng?" Gu Jiao. "Yes." "Humph. He knew that this girl would risk her life for Xiaoheng." Gu Qingfeng sternly said, "I don't care if you came back safely this time. Next time, don't do such a thankless thing. The crown princess can't deal with the crown prince. Do you know why the crown princess suddenly returned to Chengdu?" Gu Jiao shook her head. Gu Qingfeng said, "In fact, there are many rumors among the people. Some say that the Emperor of Yan wants to execute the crown princess. Some say that the Emperor of Yan wants to pardon the crown princess. There are even rumors that the Emperor himself called her the crown princess. They are all false. The crown princess wanted to come back herself. Can she come back just because she wants to?" If Gu Jiao remembered correctly, the crown princess seemed to be imprisoned in Guanshan to guard the imperial mausoleum. "Of course not. This is the inside information that I spent a lot of effort to find out," Gu Qingfeng said solemnly. "The crown princess lost her memory. In the imperial palace of Yan Kingdom, on a secluded and messy path in the southwest corner, a little palace maid carrying a basket of wild fruits walked in the afterglow of the setting sun, gasping for breath as she walked toward a dilapidated bedchamber. This used to be the most crowded place in the imperial palace of Yan Kingdom. Now it could not even be considered a place where sparrows could be seen. The little palace maid came to the door. "Grand." She had just said one word when she realized that this address was not right. She changed her words and said, "Third Duke." It was still not right. In the imperial palace, the slightest carelessness could lead to death. The little palace maid thought for a moment and could only call out, "Master, I've brought back dinner." However, no one responded to her. The little palace maid bravely stepped over the threshold and came to the overgrown front yard. The weeds had not been trimmed for a long time and were already half the height of a person. From time to time, something darted through the grass. She did not know whether it was a stray cat or a mouse. The little palace maid's face turned pale with fright. She was a new palace maid this year. Because she did not show filial piety to her aunt, she was sent to this place to serve the former crown princess who had long been dethroned. It was said that the emperor had summoned the crown princess back. This was not wrong. However, the reason was not that the emperor had finally remembered the crown princess. It was that the crown princess had been attacked in the imperial mausoleum a few days ago. It was said that the group of assassins had cut down the bridge in order to not give the crown princess a chance to escape. The crown princess had escaped by falling into the lake. However, no one expected that the crown princess had lost her memory after being rescued. Not only that, the group of assassins was so vicious that they had destroyed the imperial mausoleum. If it was only the assassination of a dethroned crown princess, the emperor might not have mobilized so many people. However, destroying the imperial mausoleum was like shaking the dragon vein of Yin Kingdom. The emperor was furious. In order to investigate the truth of the incident, he summoned the crown princess back to Chengdu. All the servants around the crown princess had been interrogated. There was no one to serve her. That was why she, a new palace maid, was sent here. This was the bedchamber where the third princess had lived before she was conferred the title of crown princess. After the crown princess's crime of colluding with the Xianyuan clan was confirmed, everyone around her was executed. The little palace maid did not dare to get up in the middle of the night for fear of accidentally bumping into the souls of the deceased. "Master! Master! Where have you been? Master!" The little palace maid could not find the crown princess. She was so anxious that she was sweating. Could something have happened to her? Although she is a dethroned crown princess, if something had happened to her, I would have to be buried with her. The crown princess that the little palace maid was anxiously looking for was sitting in a nearby pavilion. The pavilion was built on a low hillside. It was surrounded by railings on the east, west, and south sides. On the north side, there were more than 10 steps of stairs. The pavilion was a little high, so the view was broad and the wind was excellent. A man and a woman were sitting in the pavilion. The woman was wearing old and simple folk clothes. Her black hair was tied up diagonally behind her head with a wooden hairpin. Just by looking at her clothes, she was no different from a common woman. However, she was the former crown princess of the great Yan imperial family. "I heard that you came back. I should have come to visit you earlier, but I have been tied up with official business these days. Please forgive me." The one who spoke was the man sitting across from her. He was not even 40 years old. Although he called her sister, he did not look as young as her. "I heard that you are the crown prince," she said. The crown prince smiled. "Yes. After you were dethroned, Father made me the crown prince." "Oh." She turned her head slightly and looked at the palaces and a lush orchard to the side. "When was there an orchard? I remember it was a lotus pond. I had people dig it." The crown prince said pleasantly, "Father ordered people to fill it in." "Oh," she said again. She lowered her eyes and said, "I like the lotuses there very much." The crown prince said, "Sister, you see, you still remember the past." She shook her head slightly and said softly, "I only remember things before I was 17. "Is that so?" The crown prince picked up the teacup on the table and took a sip. "Then what do you remember?" She looked into the distance. "I remember mother, uncle, eldest cousin, second cousin, third cousin, eldest cousin, younger cousin, and younger cousin." The crown prince looked deeply at her and said, "Mother has passed away." She nodded slightly, as if she was numb and resigned to her fate. "Yes, the new palace maid told me. Also, the Xianyuan family is gone. I am alone. Father does not favor me. I have to be careful in the palace. Otherwise, I may lose my life at any time. The Crown Prince did not miss any of her expressions. Sister, don't say that. You still have father and me, she said softly. Mother Han is very good to me. Second brother, you are also very good to me. The Crown Prince smiled. It is what I should do. She did not reply and continued to admire the scenery in the palace. It was as if she had not seen enough after leaving for so long, and suddenly returning. The wind brushed past her beautiful face. It made people jealous that time had not left any marks on her face. The Crown Prince dismissed the eunuchs and palace maids guarding the steps. All of you leave. Yes. The palace maids retreated. The afterglow of the setting sun shone into her eyes. Her beautiful eyes seemed to contain a galaxy of stars. It was this pair of eyes. This pair of eyes was exactly the same as the bloodline of the Xianyuan family. Even if she was not angry, it made people feel an invisible pressure that seemed to come from the soul. Sister. The Crown Prince called her. She did not look at the Crown Prince. She continued to admire the scenery. You talk a bit too much today. I want to see the scenery. The Crown Prince looked at her without blinking. His smile disappeared. He said quietly, Sister, did you really lose your memory? She sighed. I can't do anything if you don't believe me. The Crown Prince suddenly smiled. It is not that I don't believe you. It is just that what happened to you is too inconceivable. Sister, there is no one else here. You don't have to hide anything from me. She said. I am not hiding anything. The Crown Prince sneered. Is that so? Just now, when I asked Imperial Older Sister what she remembered, Imperial Older Sister mentioned her mother and her maternal family, but she did not mention her only flesh and blood. Imperial Elder Sister, have you forgotten your own son? She shook her head. I have said that I have forgotten everything after I turned 17. The Crown Prince stood up and leaned toward her across the stone table. Sister, if you have forgotten, why don't I, as your younger brother, help you remember? Sister, when you were 17, you suddenly disappeared from the Yen Kingdom. After that, you had a child with someone. That child was called. I remember now. His name was Huang Fuqing. She said with a smile. No. The Crown Prince said word by word in her ear. His name was Xiaoheng. She did not move. It seems that sister really does not remember anything. The Crown Prince smiled and straightened up. It is late. I will take my leave. After saying this, he turned and walked out of the pavilion. When he was about to step down the stairs, he suddenly stopped. He seemed to have thought of something and smiled carelessly. I forgot to give you a gift. He walked back and took out a small paper bag. He opened it and put it on the table. It was a few pieces of dried meat that he picked up from the ground. They were the ones that Xiaoheng dropped. He smiled meaningfully. Is royal sister satisfied with this greeting gift? Wait. When the Crown Prince was about to leave the pavilion, she called out to him. The Crown Prince turned around and looked at her with a smile that was not a smile. Sister, did you suddenly remember something? For example, what should I tell Imperial Father and what shouldn't? She smiled and shook her head. Neither. I just remembered that I also brought you a gift. After saying this, she slowly walked to the Crown Prince and smiled at him. The next second, she reached out and pushed the Crown Prince down the steep stairs. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that cannot be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_89642826/10736439. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. Chapter 687. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. Please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel will be updated more quickly. Millions of novels will be read for free. The novels that can't be found on the internet are all available here. Falling from such a high place, Even if you don't die, you will be crippled. The crown prince has a secret guard around him. Of course, it's impossible to let the crown prince get hurt. The secret guard hiding nearby used his qinggong to fly over and catch the crown prince. Then he launched an instinctive attack on anyone who threatens the crown prince. He hit the crown princess with his palm. The crown prince's face suddenly changed. Stop! However, it was too late. The palm had already hit the crown princess. She first hit the stone table, and then fell heavily to the ground. Even the corner of her mouth overflowed with blood. Master! Not far away, a palace maid exclaimed. It turned out that the palace maid couldn't find the crown princess in the bedroom. Worried that the crown princess would cause trouble, she hurriedly came out to find her. She also informed several nearby patrolling eunuchs, so there were a total of 5 people who came. The 5 people didn't see how the crown prince fell, but they saw the former crown princess vomiting blood after being hit by the secret guard around the crown prince. Everyone was shocked. What is the crown prince doing? Why did he let the secret guard hurt the former crown princess? He also dismissed all the palace people around. Does he want to secretly deal with the former crown princess? If they didn't come, would the former crown princess have been killed by the crown prince? They thought of the attack on the crown princess in the imperial tomb. Could it be? The crown prince looked at her coldly. Shangguanyan, you are ruthless. That's how it is. Gu Chengfeng said to Gu Jiao. The crown princess lost her memory. She can't even remember her son's name. Sometimes she calls him Zhang Qing, sometimes she calls him Li Qing. I don't know how she provoked the crown prince in the evening and made him attack her in the imperial palace. Originally, no useful clues were found about the attack on the crown princess. In other words, the crown prince's people did it too cleanly, not leaving a trace. But now that such a thing happened, the crown prince's suspicions suddenly increased. Is the crown prince such an impatient person? The king was sitting in the imperial palace. If the crown prince dared to come blatantly, why did he arrange an assassination? Did the crown prince think that he didn't expose himself? Gu Jiao felt that something was amiss. Who are you? Gu Jiao's eyes turned cold. It's me. Su Fengxian's voice sounded. Come in. Gu Jiao took back the crabapple needles in her hand. Su Fengxian awkwardly pushed open the door and entered with a plate of fresh iced melons and fruits. She smiled and said, I just cut them. She placed the fruit platter on the table. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Wait. Gu Jiao stopped her. Su Fengxian turned around and said with a flattering smile, What instructions does young lord have? Gu Jiao asked, What do you think of what happened just now? Gu Chengfeng looked at Gu Jiao in surprise. Su Fengxian hurriedly waved her hand. What do you mean by that? I didn't hear a single word. Gu Jiao pulled out a small knife. Su Fengxian was so scared that her legs went soft. She used her hands to support herself on the table. I'll talk, I'll tell you everything. Gu Jiao cut a piece of fruit and looked at her strangely. Su Fengxian looked at her small knife, and then looked at the fruit that she had cut into thin slices. She was instantly stunned. You just want to cut the melon? I thought you were going to cut me. Since she was already exposed, there was no point in hiding it. Su Fengxian used a handkerchief to wipe the cold sweat on her forehead. She laughed dryly and said, I didn't hear much. I only heard you talking about the crown princess and the crown prince. If you ask me what I think it was the crown prince who did it. Is the crown prince that stupid? Gu Jiao asked. Of course the crown prince isn't that stupid. But didn't the people in the palace see it? It was the crown prince's imperial bodyguard that injured the crown princess. Although Su Fengxian also felt that it didn't match the crown prince's usual calm temperament, facts spoke louder than words. How could it be false when they saw it with their own eyes? Gu Chengfeng touched his chin and said thoughtfully, Could it be the crown princess's trick? For example, she deliberately attacked the crown prince and lured the crown prince's secret guards to defend her? He had read too many of the old chancellor's storybooks. He had almost memorized the 36 stratagems by heart. Su Fengxian shook her handkerchief. There's something you don't know. I'd rather believe that the crown prince couldn't keep his cool than the crown princess's trick. Because, When she said this, her expression suddenly became solemn. She's the proudest woman in the whole of Great Yen. The crown princess who didn't even beg for mercy when she was executed in public. Countless whips fell on her body. She was beaten until her skin and flesh were torn open in the throne room. She was watched by all the civil and military officials, and suffered a death of 1,000 cuts in her spirit. Under the double destruction of her body and soul, she didn't shed a single tear. She didn't cry out that she was wronged or say that she was wronged, Father Emperor. If she was willing to bend her lofty and unyielding character, and kneel down to beg the monarch to forgive her, how could she end up in such a miserable state? If she couldn't be the crown princess, she could at least be a princess. But she would rather be demoted to a commoner, and be imprisoned forever than bow her head and show weakness. This was the crown princess. Su Fengxian sighed. How could such a crown princess use the trick of injuring herself to gain sympathy? This is a trick that she disdains to use. To let her break her lofty and unyielding character. It's more painful than killing her. Maybe you can't understand what I'm saying. Alas, I don't know what to say. In short, if she really did this, then she must have something that she wants to protect very much. It's more important than her life and dignity. Imperial Palace, in the pavilion at the southwest corner. Shang Guanyin didn't leave. She just sat on the stone bench. The little palace maid anxiously waited on her and earnestly advised her. Master, let's go back. You're injured, at least go back and lie down. In a while, someone will come to you to investigate the situation. Shang Guanyin didn't speak. The little palace maid was anxious. Then go back and eat first, okay? Shang Guanyin still didn't speak. The little palace maid scratched her ears and scratched her cheeks. She didn't know what to do. Okay, I'll go and bring the food. Master, wait here for a while. The little palace maid went back to the bedroom to get the food. Shang Guanyin sat quietly in the pavilion, looking at the direction of Fengqi Palace, and also the direction of the Xianyuan family. The night wind brought a hint of coolness, blowing her hair. Suddenly, a small figure carved from jade climbed the steps on both hands and feet, and came to the pavilion. She poked out her cute little head from behind the pillar. Who are you? When Shang Guanyin heard the child's tender little voice, she regained her consciousness and turned her head to look at the other party. Seeing a beautiful little girl wearing a palace dress, she smiled slightly. I am Shang Guanyin, who are you? Oh, children have an instinct to distinguish malicious intentions. The young princess felt goodwill from her, so she came out from behind the pillar. I am Shang Guanshui. They all call me young princess. Little Junju. Shang Guanyin also called out. The young princess went to climb the stool, but the stool was too high, she couldn't climb up. Shang Guanyin helped to carry her up. After she sat down, she said seriously like a little adult. Thank you. By the way, your surname is Shangguan. Are you a princess? Or are you a princess like me? If she was outside, she might not ask this. But in the palace, the Shangguan women were generally royalty. Shang Guanyin said, neither. The young princess grabbed the corner of her clothes. She obviously didn't understand why there was a Shangguan woman in the palace who was neither a princess nor a princess. But children's logic was different from adults. If she wasn't, then she wasn't. Oh, the young princess said. My father is Yan Shanjun. Who is your father? Shang Guanyin looked at the young princess with an epiphany. So you are ninth uncle's daughter. The young princess was a smart child. When she heard this sentence, she quickly reacted. You call my father ninth uncle, so I am your little cousin. But why haven't I seen you before? Which uncle's child are you? Why don't you speak? Could it be? She had several uncles who had passed away because of their old age. The young princess seriously frowned and climbed to the stone table. She stretched out her small hand and patted Shang Guanyin's shoulder. Don't be sad. I'm not sad. I haven't seen him for more than 10 years. Even when she returned to the palace, he didn't summon her. She also didn't take the initiative to greet him. The two of them were in a deadlock. The young princess understood and no longer mentioned this sad topic. Young princess. Young princess. Where did you go, young princess? Oh, they found me. I can't play with you today. The young princess slipped down from the stool and waved to Shangguanyan. Cousin, goodbye. The young princess was brought back to the emperor's bedroom by the palace servants. Yan Shanjun was the posthumous son of the Empress Dowager. He was more than 20 years younger than the emperor. He was raised by the emperor as his own son. The emperor had feelings for Yan Shanjun as if he was his own son, but he didn't have the expectation that his son would succeed. Without expectations, there would be no disappointment. Therefore, Yan Shanjun became the emperor's favorite younger brother. Because of this, the young princess was particularly favored. The young princess went directly to the emperor's study. The study was an important place. Even the princes and princesses couldn't enter and leave at will. But for the young princess, it was just a small vegetable garden. She could enter whenever she wanted. At this moment, the terrifying tyrant of the great Yan was looking at the memorial in his hand with a cold face. When he saw the little fellow come in, his face slightly relaxed, but in fact, it was still very scary. It's just that the young princess didn't feel this kind of horror. Where did you go today? The emperor asked the young princess. Uncle, your majesty. The young princess first gave a dignified salute, then raised her small head and honestly said, I went to the pavilion to play. I met a cousin today. The emperor picked up the teacup and took a sip. The young princess sighed sadly. Her name is Shangguanyan. She is so pitiful. Her father died more than 10 years ago. The emperor spat out a mouthful of tea. Digression. The young princess' warm reminder. At the end of the month, the votes will be cleared. Dear fairy sisters, if you have a vote, please vote now. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more wonderful content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/107360497. HTML Genius memorized this site's address. www.zhbqg.com Bikuga mobile reading website. Chapter 688. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found on the internet are all available here. This. The king looked at the little bean in front of him and swallowed the words account. His eyes were heavy as he said, Who told you this? Outside the imperial study, the eunuchs and palace maids who heard this sentence had already knelt on the ground. Even the palace steward who was carrying snacks in the room also knelt at the door. He raised the tray high above his head and trembled all over. The young princess was a focused child. She didn't notice the movement at the door and outside the door. She said with a childish voice, Shangguanyan told me. The king's eyes were filled with a terrible storm. She said that I am dead? The young princess tilted her head seriously. She didn't say it directly, but I am so smart, of course I can guess it. When I asked her who her father was, she seemed a little sad. She said that she hadn't seen her father for more than 10 years. So I thought that her father must be dead. Otherwise, how could he not see her for more than 10 years? The king's old blood was stuck in his chest, and he almost had a stroke. The palace maids outside the imperial study were all scared pale. Young princess, you're the first one to curse the monarch like this since ancient times. If you lose your little head later, don't blame us for not pleading for you. The monarch clutched his chest and asked about the content of the conversation between the two. Finally, he confirmed that Shangguanyan really didn't say anything, nor did she give any hint in this regard. It was all the little bean's random interpretation. If it was someone else who said this, they would have been beheaded hundreds of times. The king suppressed his anger and said in a heavy tone, Tomorrow you will go to the imperial school and study with the Tai Fu. Ah, why? The young princess doesn't want to study. The king said, You are 4 years old. It's time for you to learn. He whispered, At least you can understand human language. The young princess's ears were sharp. She heard his whisper and said with a dissatisfied face, I can understand human language. I can understand Uncle His Majesty's words. Woo-woo. She wanted to say more, but the head of Imperial household came in and covered her mouth in time. Oh my God, little ancestor, you've already cursed the monarch to be dead, so stop cursing the monarch to be inhuman. The chamberlain smiled and said, I will bring the young princess back to her room. Woo-woo-woo. Don't cover my mouth, I still want to talk. I still want to say it. The young princess was carried away by the head steward of the palace. After the Minister of Internal Affairs settled the young princess down, he felt as if he had shed a layer of skin. The young princess looked very obedient, but she was not an easy child to deal with. Your Majesty. The Minister of Internal Affairs, Zhang Dequan, was sweating profusely as he returned to the imperial study. At this time, night had already fallen. The light in the surroundings converged, and darkness gradually enveloped the entire palace. Although the imperial study was lit, the night breeze blew in from time to time, causing the oil lamp to flicker. The monarch's originally ruthless and cold expression became even more uncertain. The monarch asked in a deep voice, Have you investigated thoroughly? How did the young princess get there? Zhang Dequan replied, I have carefully asked the palace servants by the young princess' side. The young princess ran there herself. In other words, no one lured her there. The monarch picked up a memorial and said, That matter, go and do it. Zhang Dequan understood and bowed respectfully. Yes, I have received the order. That night, the secret guard by the crown prince's side who had injured the former crown princess was executed. The crown prince's hundreds of embroidered uniform guards were taken away in the night, locked up in the dungeon, and tortured. There were 3 questions to be asked. First, was the crown prince related to the assassination of the deposed crown princess? Second, was the crown prince related to the destruction of the imperial mausoleum? Third, was the crown prince related to the crown princess' amnesia? In the study of the crown prince's residence, the crown prince's expression was very cold. I really did not expect that she would give me such a big show of strength as soon as she arrived. Nan Gongli agreed and said, This does not seem like the deposed crown princess's way of doing things. The deposed crown princess's background was too high. All schemes and machinations were like floating clouds in the face of absolute power. She disdained to play tricks with others. After thinking for a moment, Nan Gongli said, But people change. In addition, she has experienced so many things. She has concealed her strength and bided her time in the imperial mausoleum for many years. Perhaps she is no longer the deposed crown princess we know. The crown prince's gaze was deep as he snorted coldly. I have not seen you for many years. You have really made me see you in a new light. Nan Gongli said, I think that your Majesty's actions are not for the sake of the deposed crown princess. The crown prince sighed helplessly. I understand. Father is just being paranoid. The monarch was naturally paranoid. Rather than saying that he was worried that the crown prince would bully the deposed crown princess, it was better to say that he was warning the crown prince not to have any thoughts of rebellion. The crown prince stood up and walked to the window. Looking at the crescent moon in the sky, he said, I am loyal to father. How could I have any thoughts of rebellion? Nan Gongli walked to the crown prince's side. It is not only for the crown prince to see, but also for all the princes and civil and military officials. After all, His Majesty does not wish for a second Xianyuan family to appear. Thinking of the events of the past, the crown prince was silent for a moment. Nan Gongli asked worriedly, Zhang Dequan won't be able to get anything out of the interrogation, right? The crown prince smiled coldly. I really hope that he can get something out of the interrogation. I am also very confused. How was the bridge broken? How was the imperial mausoleum destroyed? How did the crown princess lose her memory? Amnesia. Hearing this, Nan Gongli more or less understood that the crown prince's side had been cleaned up. The brocade guards that were taken away should have nothing to do with the assassination of the crown princess. Thus, no matter how they were interrogated, there would not be any evidence against the crown prince. The crown prince looked coldly at Nan Gongli. Didn't you say that there was no one by her side that she could use? Why did none of the people I sent come back? Nangongli hurriedly bowed and said, I have secretly investigated the Crown Princess. These years, the Crown Princess has indeed not had any powerful experts by her side. Could it be some surviving member of the Xianyuan family? The Crown Prince said, the Xianyuan family has long been exterminated. How could there be any surviving members? The men of the Xianyuan family were either killed in battle or executed. Even the infants in swaddling clothes were not spared. Although the women were sent to the educational division, they could not bear the humiliation and all committed suicide. The Crown Prince continued, the surviving members are the deposed Crown Princess and the imperial grandson. At the mention of the imperial grandson, the Crown Prince's face became even colder. You still haven't found the whereabouts of that child? Nangongli hurriedly said. I have already given the order. There should be a result soon. The Crown Prince said coldly, to cut the weeds, you must remove the roots. Nangongli said, I obey. Father, father. Suddenly, a young and tender voice came from outside the study. The Crown Prince's expression changed, and he gave Nangongli a look. Nangongli understood and hid behind a bookshelf. A toddler stumbled into the room. The Crown Prince walked over with a smile and picked up his younger daughter. Ling, or why are you here? The younger daughter said. I can't sleep. I miss father. The Crown Prince smiled. Father will sleep with you, okay? Okay. I also want father to tell me a story. Okay. Tell me, what story does Linger want to hear? The Crown Prince carried his younger daughter out of the study. Along the way, his happy and doting laughter could be heard. Nangongli came out of the study and touched the wound on his right arm. His eyes were cold as he said, Xiao Lulang, the son will pay for the father's debt. This time you can't escape. Gu Jiao had eaten dinner at Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion and was preparing to go back. Suddenly, a gerfalcon flapped its wings and flew to Gu Qingfeng's window sill. Gu Jiao was surprised. Xiao Jiao also looked at Gu Jiao in surprise. Its wings stopped flapping in midair. The only one who was not surprised was Gu Qingfeng. It seemed that Xiao Jiao had come here more than once or twice. There was a rolled-up piece of paper tied to Xiao Jiao's right leg with a red string. Gu Jiao looked at Gu Qingfeng. Gu Qingfeng said, Take it down and take a look. It's most likely written by Xiao Heng. Gu Jiao learned from martial mother, Nan, that Xiao Heng and Gu Qingfeng had frequently gone to her rented residence to wait for her in the past few days. Thus, they had bumped into each other. However, Gu Jiao did not expect that the two of them would secretly send letters. Gu Qingfeng explained, It's inconvenient for him in the inner city. If there's a day when he can't leave the city, he'll have Xiao Jiao send a letter to ask me if you've returned. Gu Jiao untied the piece of paper from Xiao Jiao's right leg. On the paper was Xiao Heng's handwriting. There weren't many words. It first asked about Gu Jiao's whereabouts and then said something. What's wrong? Gu Qingfeng saw that Gu Jiao's expression was cold and could not help but ask. Did something happen to Xiao Heng? Gu Jiao handed him the piece of paper. He met Nangongli. It was because he met Nangongli that Xiao Heng gave up on leaving the city. He did not want to accidentally bring Nangongli's people to Gu Jiao's place. With Nangongli's methods, he would definitely investigate the people of Zhao Kingdom who entered Chengdu, especially the identities of Gu Jiao and Xiao Lulang. Xiao Heng reminded Gu Qingfeng to pay attention to the movements of Tianqiong Academy on the note. Seeing this name, Gu Qingfeng's eyes darkened. It was Nangongli who injured Gu Yan, right? It caused Gu Yan's heart disease to act up, and he was half dead. He had no choice but to go to Yan Kingdom for surgery. It's him. Gu Jiao looked in the direction of the inner city through the window, her eyes overflowing with murderous intent. It's time to settle the score with Nangongli. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that you can't find online are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896422826/1073463522 HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikuga mobile reading website. Chapter 689. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all available here. When Nangongli returned to his residence, he immediately called his trusted bodyguard over and asked him about the progress of the investigation. The bodyguard said with a troubled expression, "General, there are too many places to investigate. It's only been a day. Even if we go to the Ministry of Revenue to investigate the household registration, it will take several days, right?" This was the truth. Investigating a person's information was not that simple. Although the household registration of the country and the household registration of foreigners were recorded separately, the problem was that there were many foreigners. In addition, the Ministry of Revenue wouldn't really give them the household registration of foreigners for investigation. In fact, if someone went to watch the archery competition, they wouldn't find the name Xiao Lulang unfamiliar. However, the distance between them was like a mountain. Nangongli didn't pay attention to archery, so he had never heard of the new student of Zhao country, Xiao Lulang, who single-handedly changed the style of the 3 archery competitions. It wasn't that Nangongli didn't empathize with the difficulties of his subordinates, but he also had his own difficulties. The crown prince didn't even tell the Han family about the assassination of Xiao Lulang and entrusted him with an important task. As a result, he messed up in Zhao country and let the person escape to the king's eyes. If the king knew about this, they would all be finished. Nangongli frowned and said, "I don't care what method you use. You must find Xiao Lulang within 3 days." The bodyguard felt bitter. Not to mention 3 days, even 30 days might not be enough. There were so many people in Xingdu. Finding Xiao Lulang was tantamount to finding a needle in a haystack. The bodyguard sighed. "It would be good if we had people in the Ministry of Revenue." The Minister of Revenue was a member of the Wang family. He had never interacted much with the Nangong family. The Wang family was a true century-old prosperous family. The strength of the family was above the Han family. If it weren't for the fact that Wang Xianfei couldn't give birth to a son, the position of crown prince would have been uncertain. It was difficult to sneak into the Ministry of Revenue to investigate the household registration. The Nangong family and the Wang family had experts. It wasn't worth it to alert the enemy. Nangongli frowned. "If you have time to talk nonsense, hurry up and find him." "Yes." The trusted guard hurriedly retreated. Nangongli closed his eyes. He had to find Xiao Lulang as soon as possible and kill him. The crown prince had already been disappointed in him once. He couldn't afford to be disappointed a second time. Before Nangongli returned to his room to rest, he inexplicably thought of his injured youngest son. He hadn't gone to see him for 2 days. He thought for a moment, then turned and went to Nangonglin's courtyard. Nangonglin did not know that his father was coming. He was lying on his side on the bed without a care for his image. As he shook his legs, he leisurely listened to the servant talking about the bowls competition. "Are you sure? The Tianqiong Academy lost?" The page boy smiled and said, Yes. Little young master, I went to see for myself. Aya, he lost so miserably." Nangonglin patted his thigh gloatingly. "A bunch of people who overestimate themselves. Don't you know who opened Jianan Academy? That's the academy of the Imperial Preceptor Palace." The page boy said flatteringly, "Little young master is right." Nangonglin plucked a grape from the tray held by the maidservant kneeling beside the bed and threw it into his mouth. "By the way, how angry was that Xiao Lulang?" The page boy said, "He didn't go." Nangonglin frowned. "What do you mean?" The page boy explained. "It means that he didn't go." That day even Mu Chuan, who had just recovered from his injuries, went on stage, but Xiao Lulang didn't appear from beginning to end. I asked around later, and it seems that Xiao Lulang is sick. He's very sick and can't come to the competition. Nangonglin laughed heartily. "Serves him right. Xiao Lulang has such a day." Isn't that so? Master. The page boy was halfway through his words when he suddenly saw Nangongli standing at the door. He was so scared that his face turned pale, and he bent down. Father. Nangonglin hurriedly put away his bad manners, sat up properly, and waved at the maidservant beside him without batting an eyelid. The maidservant put away the fruit tray, stood up, and bowed to Nangongli. Master. Nangongli thought of his son's frivolous appearance just now, and his heart was filled with anger. However, he still saved his son's face in front of the servants. All of you leave. Yes. The page boy and maidservant hurriedly walked out, and the page boy did not forget to close the door for the two of them. Nangonglin asked, Father, it's so late, why are you here? Nangongli glanced at him coldly. You're recuperating at home, so you don't go to the academy. Is this how you look when you're recuperating? Nangonglin rubbed his sleeves guiltily. I'm stretching my muscles and bones. The most infuriating thing was not to catch a child making a mistake, but to deny it even after catching him. Nangongli really wanted to slap him. He raised his hand, and Nangonglin was so scared that he quickly covered his head with his hands. When Nangongli saw the scar on his wrist, he suppressed his anger and put down his hand. Get back to the academy tomorrow. Oh. Nangonglin reluctantly agreed. Nangongli shouted sternly, What's with your attitude? Nangonglin was so scared that he trembled. He hurriedly said, I'll go. I'll go. I'll definitely go. Nangongli asked, I just heard you mention a name, Xiao Lulang. Who is this person? Oh, him, a person from a lower country. Nangonglin did not tell the truth about his injury to his family. First, his father did not allow him to cheat. Second, it was fine if he cheated, but he also fell down. It was so embarrassing. Therefore, everyone in the family thought it was just an accident, and did not deliberately ask about any of the bowlers on the field. Nangongli's eyes were slightly cold. Which lower country? Nangonglin thought for a while. It seems to be Zhao country or Zhao country. I don't remember. Nangongli slowly clenched his fist. Newcomers? Nangonglin nodded. Yes. Which academy? Nangongli asked. Nangonglin said, Tianqiong Academy. They entered the last round, but they were beaten by Jianan Academy. Tianqiong Academy, Xiao Lulang, a person from a lower country. Ha, it was really a case of wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, but finding it without any effort. Xiao Lulang, your death date has arrived. Gu Jiao returned to the house. It was very late. Madame Nan was embroidering in the central room waiting for her. Madame Nan was not only bad at cooking, but she was also very stupid at embroidery. However, she was now a mother. Although she was just an adoptive mother and Madame Nan, she still decided to learn these things as soon as possible. Jiao Jiao, you're back. She put down the embroidery in her hands. You haven't eaten yet, right? Gu Jiao said. I've eaten. Madame Nan, you should rest early. I'll go to sleep after I'm done with this. What do you think of my embroidery? Madame Nan showed the results of her night's work to Gu Jiao. To be honest, Gu Jiao hadn't seen an embroidery artist who could compete with her great-aunt in a long time. You've improved, Gu Jiao said without changing her expression. Mistress Nan smiled happily and said, Is that so? I think so too. Madame Nan was praised and became even more energetic. She started embroidering in high spirits. Gu Jiao wanted to say something but stopped. Forget it, as long as Madame Nan was happy. Gu Jiao went to Gu Yan's room. Gu Xiaoshan was already fast asleep. Gu Yan was a light sleeper. Or it could be said that he hadn't slept at all. Gu Jiao touched his forehead. I said I would come back. And Gu Yan made a small nasal sound. Go to sleep, Gu Jiao said softly. The next day, Nangongli woke up before the sun rose. If it wasn't for the fact that it was too late last night, and the inner city gates were already closed, he might have killed his way to Tianqiong Academy in the middle of the night. The moment the inner city gates opened, Nangongli sat in the carriage and drove out. Although Xiao Lulang was just a weak scholar, he was as cunning as Marquis Xianping. He didn't feel at ease leaving him to his subordinates. He wanted to kill him personally. Nangongli's carriage arrived near the academy. The carriage driver was his trusted bodyguard. He disguised himself and no one recognized his original appearance. Go and ask. Nangongli said. Yes. The bodyguard jumped off the carriage and went to the gate of Tianqiong Academy. He handed a string of knife coins to the gatekeeper and smiled. Little brother, I'm from Five Mountains Academy. My master admires Master Zhao's character and wants to get to know him. I'm here to ask if Master Xiao has Xiao Lulang come. The gatekeeper took the knife coins and said, Master Xiao won't come to the academy today. You've come for nothing. The bodyguard was slightly stunned. He then asked with a smile, Can I ask where he went? The gatekeeper said, He went to the palace to see the king. The bodyguard was shocked. What? See the king? Is this true? On the carriage, Nangongli frowned when he heard the bodyguard's report. Why would he go to see the king? The monarch wouldn't just casually meet a subordinate. The bodyguard said. The gatekeeper said that they lost because of the shooting competition. However, Jianan Academy exchanged rewards with them. Jianan Academy took 10,000 taels of gold, and they were qualified to enter the palace to see the king. If Xiao Lulang went somewhere else, Nangongli could wait for him to come back. However, Xiao Lulang went to the palace to see the king. Nangongli gritted his teeth. We can't let him see the king. Return to the inner city. On a luxurious carriage heading to the inner city, except for Mu Qingchen, the other 4 members of the shooting competition from Tianqiong Academy were all there. Mu Chuan touched his aching head and asked strangely, Lulang, didn't you say you didn't want to enter the palace? Why did you change your mind? Gu Jiao smiled evilly. I thought about it. It's not bad to enter the palace. Nangongli, if you want to kill me, come to the palace. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet can be found here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896428226/1073459943. HTML Genius memorized the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion mobile reading website. Chapter 690. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are all available here. On the carriage, the trusted guard advised Nangongli, General, that is the Imperial Palace. We cannot act rashly. Let's do it another day? Or wait for him to come out? Nangongli snorted coldly. Wait for him to come out? You don't know who he is going to see today? The trusted guard said. I know, Your Majesty. Nangongli said snappily. If Xiao Lulang reveals to the emperor that we have been chasing after him all these years, you and I will not live to see tomorrow morning. The trusted guard said. The emperor may not believe him. Nangongli said coldly. What if he believes? In this world, anyone's mind can be guessed, except for our great Yan's emperor. You will never be able to guess what he is thinking. His actions are strange, and he does not have any rules. If you say he is tyrannical, he will not care about a wild child from the countryside peeing on his shoes. This sounds unbelievable, but I have seen it with my own eyes. The trusted guard was dumbfounded. Nangongli continued. If you think the emperor is merciful to children because of this, then he has personally ordered the death of a cowherd boy. The trusted guard was completely speechless. There were many rumors about the emperor, but they were all hearsay after all. He did not dare to believe them all. He did not expect his general to have seen the emperor's crazy actions with his own eyes. No wonder there was another name for the emperor. Crazy Emperor. Nangongli said. Now you understand that I cannot take this risk, right? Even if Xiao Lulang only has a 1 in 10 chance of making the emperor believe him, I cannot gamble with my life. The trusted guard cupped his fist. I understand. General, this trip is dangerous. Let me assassinate him. Dangerous? Nangong Li smiled meaningfully. Xiao Lulang really put in a lot of effort to see the emperor. But does he think this is foolproof? He will soon know that it is 100 times easier for me to kill him in the imperial palace than outside. The carriage wobbled into the inner city. The furthest place Gu Jiao had walked in the inner city was the Tsanglan Women's Academy. She didn't know what it was like after that. Along the way, she did not hide her curiosity. She lifted the curtain and openly looked around. In fact, other than Mu Chuan, who had entered the palace before, the rest of them were entering the palace for the first time. They were also quite curious. Mu Chuan was very happy to be their guide. He pointed at the shops by the roadside and introduced them one by one. Which shop had delicious preserved fruits, and which shop had greasy pork knuckles. We've arrived at Changyang Street. After the carriage made a turn to the east, Mu Chuan exclaimed excitedly, "We'll reach Great Yen Gate after making another turn." Although he had the experience of entering the palace, the feeling of going with his family and classmates was very different. Wu Fuzi was in the carriage in front. He looked calm, but in fact he was eavesdropping. After all, it was his first time entering the palace. "What is Great Yen Gate?" Gu Jiao asked. Mu Chuan introduced it with pride. "You're from Zhao Kingdom. You may not know, but there are 5 gates in Great Yan's palace. The first gate is Gao Gate, followed by Fengtian Gate, Duan Gate, Meridian Gate, and Taiha Gate. The place we're going to is one of the 3 main halls behind Meridian Gate, the Golden Imperial Hall. It was originally called Taiha Hall, but it was later renamed. As expected of Zhao Kingdom, there were several more gates than Zhao Kingdom's palace. The carriage couldn't travel too fast near the palace, so it took them about 15 minutes to reach Gao Gate. Today's visit to the palace was scheduled, so there was a 30-year-old eunuch waiting outside Gao Gate. When he saw the carriage stop, he went up and asked with a smile, "Are you a teacher and student from Tianqiong Academy?" Wu Fuzi lifted the curtain and got out of the carriage. He saluted the eunuch and said politely, "I'm Wu Cheng from Tianqiong Academy." The eunuch said with a pleasant expression, "Ah, you're Wu Fuzi. I've heard a lot about you. My surname is Li. Wu Fuzi can call me Li Sandy." Wu Fuzi didn't take others' politeness as his confidence. He smiled and saluted, "So it's eunuch Li." Li Sandy's smile deepened. "Then please get out of the carriage with Wu Fuzi and the other young masters. I'll bring you into the palace." Gu Jiao and the others got out of the carriage. Among them, Li Sandy only recognized Mu Chuan. He smiled and greeted Mu Chuan. "Young Master Mu, long time no see." Mu Chuan obviously didn't know Li Sandy. Li Sandy smiled. "I used to work in Baohe Palace and was transferred to the Imperial Palace last year. I've seen young Master Mu from afar at the Spring Lantern Festival banquet." "I see." Mu Chuan nodded and greeted, then called eunuch Li. "Don't underestimate the eunuchs of the throne room. They went to the Imperial Palace every day and were the closest people to the emperor. Although they didn't want to win them over, at least they shouldn't look down on them." Mu Chuan usually looked silly and sweet, but he had a keen sense of social interaction as a young master of an aristocratic family. Li Sandy smiled until his eyes couldn't be seen. Gu Jiao, Yuan Xiao, and the others didn't deliberately get close to Li Sandy. Li Sandy didn't pay attention to everyone. He gave face to Wu Fuzi because he was the master of the fencing team. He gave face to Mu Chuan because he was the legitimate son of the Mu family. The other 3 people's identities were a little. Li Sandy glanced around and saw Gu Jiao with a birthmark on the left side of her face. He paused for a moment. This kind of appearance was really rare. The other party's temperament was even rarer. It was reasonable to say that people with a disfigured face would feel inferior, but this young man had an imposing appearance and a valiant posture. He exuded an unruly arrogance from head to toe. It can't be right? He looks so arrogant. Eunuch Li? Mu Chuan blocked Eunuch Li's line of sight at the right time. He didn't want anyone to pay too much attention to Xiao Liulang's appearance and look down on Xiao Lulang. Li Sandy came back to his senses and smiled awkwardly. "We'll be there soon. Speaking of which, why didn't Master Su come this time?" Mu Chuan said. "My 4th brother had something to do at the last minute." He had already asked Concubine Xian to apologize to His Majesty. Concubine Xian was the legitimate daughter of the Wang family. Her sister-in-law, old Madame Wang, was the younger sister of old Master Mu. Li Sandy sighed. "Sigh, you guys are really bold. You actually dared to exchange rewards with the people of Jianan Academy. Aren't you afraid of His Majesty's blame?" Gu Jiao nodded. "That's right. Give me back my gold." Mu Chuan smiled. Jianan Academy is run by the State Preceptor Hall. His Majesty has let them play in the palace many times. Why would he still want to see them? He had asked Concubine Xian, and she said it was okay. That was why he did it. They walked through a long bluestone palace path. There was a checkpoint at the Fengtian Gate and the Duan Gate respectively. After passing through the Duan Gate, they would arrive at the outer court. Mu Chuan introduced it to Gu Jiao. The east side is the Imperial Clan Court, the 6 ministries, and the Honglu Temple. In the early years, the Imperial Astronomer was also here. After the State Preceptor Hall was built, the Imperial Astronomer moved away. The west side is the Supreme Court and the 4 rearguard commanderies, front, back, left, and right. As they spoke, they arrived at the Meridian Gate. The checkpoint at the Meridian Gate was obviously stricter than the previous 3 gates. If Li Sandy had not stopped them, Gu Jiao and the others would have been searched. "It's to prevent us from bringing weapons," Mu Chuan explained softly. This trip was really long. Fortunately, they finally entered the Meridian Gate. The majestic throne room came into view. It was like a lion king under the sky, exuding a solemn aura. Mu Chuan thought they were going to the throne room, but Li Sandy brought them to the Zhanghe Hall at the back. Li Sandy smiled and said, "His Majesty is still in the morning court. I'll take you to the side hall to wait." The group arrived at the side hall of the Zhanghe Hall. Li Sandy ordered the servants to serve fresh lychees and snacks. Li Sandy probably understood that his presence would make them feel uncomfortable, so he thoughtfully stood guard at the door of the side hall. Other than Gu Jiao, the others in the room began to feel excited or nervous. "Titi, we're going to meet His Majesty." Wu Fuzi raised his teacup, his hands trembling. Zhao Wei and Yuan Zhao's hands did not tremble, but their legs did. Mu Chuan was excited. He was finally going to meet His Majesty. Although he had been to the palace, he had only met the concubines in the palace. Otherwise, he had seen His Majesty from afar during the palace banquet. He had never been summoned by His Majesty face to face. He felt that he could brag about it for the rest of his life. Gu Jiao was a little absent-minded. Was Nangongli stupid? Or did he not have the guts to come to the palace? If he did not act now, they would have to go back after meeting His Majesty. Gu Jiao stood up. Mu Chuan asked, "What are you doing?" Gu Jiao nodded and said, "I'm going to the washroom." "Do you want me to go with you?" Mu Chuan asked considerately. Gu Jiao glanced at him and said, "No need." Mu Chuan said, "I'll let me go with you. It's your first time in the palace." Gu Jiao said, "Are you going to help me or what?" Mu Chuan suddenly choked. Gu Jiao stepped out of the door and asked the palace maid in the corridor where the washroom was. The palace maid pointed the way. Gu Jiao walked out of the side hall and walked towards the washroom. When she passed by a small garden, a palace maid walked towards her in a hurry. The palace maid did not look where she was going and bumped into Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao was as steady as a rock and did not move at all. Instead, she bumped into herself and fell to the ground. A few gold ingots fell out of her arms, and she hurriedly grabbed them. At first, she quickly looked at Gu Jiao and lowered her head with a guilty conscience. She hid the gold ingots behind her back and said, I'm sorry." "It's okay," Gu Jiao said. She bowed to Gu Jiao and then ran away without looking back. Stealing from the palace? With Gu Jiao's temperament, she naturally would not care about this kind of thing. Gu Jiao continued to walk forward. When she was about to reach the washroom, an unfamiliar young eunuch caught up with her and asked, "In front, is young Master Xiao in front?" Gu Jiao stopped and looked at him indifferently. "I am. Who are you?" The young eunuch bent down and put his hands on his thighs. He said breathlessly, "I am little Deng. His Majesty. His Majesty summoned." Eunuch Li brought the others. I came to bring young Master Xiao over." "Young Master Xiao, hurry, follow me." Don't let His Majesty wait too long. Otherwise, when His Majesty blames you, young Master Shao will suffer. Oh. Gu Jiao turned around and said, then I'll have to trouble you to lead the way. The young eunuch wiped the sweat on his neck with his sleeve and said, This way please. Gu Jiao followed him and walked forward. This is not the way I came, Gu Jiao said. The young eunuch said, that way is too late. The corridors take a long time. If we go from here, we will reach the throne room in no time. Gu Jiao said, oh. The young eunuch continued to lead the way. The flattering smile on his face gradually froze, and was replaced by a look of disdain and calculation. Gu Jiao followed him out of the hall of Zhanghe, and came to a lush grassland. To the east of the grassland was a small greenhouse, and to the west was a small woodshed for storing tools. We will be there soon, the young eunuch said with a fake smile. It doesn't matter if we don't get there, Gu Jiao said. The young eunuch was stunned. He glanced at the woodshed without being noticed. Gu Jiao said, are you not going to take me to the woodshed? The young eunuch was stunned again. Gu Jiao said indifferently, then I'm really going. Then she walked past the young eunuch and through the door of the woodshed. The young eunuch's eyes trembled. He subconsciously reached out his hand as if he wanted to grab Gu Jiao, but in the end he didn't have the courage. Just as he was hesitating, the door of the woodshed was pulled open from the inside with a clang. Two powerful eunuchs walked out fiercely. One of them had a rope in his hand, and the other had a sack in his hand. Gu Jiao looked at the sack and raised her eyebrows. Oh! They were on the same side. The eunuch holding the sack coldly said to the young eunuch, why are you talking nonsense with him? Why aren't you going to catch him? Yes. The young eunuch received the order and steeled his heart. He gathered his courage and threw himself at Gu Jiao. The young eunuch didn't know martial arts. The two older eunuchs did, but they weren't very good. If the person entering the palace today was the real scholar Xiao Lulang, this lineup would be more than enough. So Nangongli didn't underestimate Xiao Liulang's strength. But Nangongli never expected that the person entering the palace would be Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao didn't have the time to waste with them. In the blink of an eye, the three of them fell to the ground. They were in so much pain that their facial features were twisted. Didn't you say he didn't know martial arts? Who knows? Oh, my old waist. Gu Jiao looked down at the three of them. Where is Nangongli? The eyes of the three flashed, but they didn't say anything. Gu Jiao tilted her head and stepped on the shoulder of one of the eunuchs. She broke his arm on the spot. Don't make me ask a third time. That person was in so much pain that his veins popped out. His whole body was covered in cold sweat, and his breathing seemed to be choked. He used the last of his willpower to suppress the pain from his body and said, what are you saying? We don't understand. This is the palace. General Nangong. How could he come? Gu Jiao calmly said. If he doesn't see me die with his own eyes, how could he be at ease? Nangongli had already failed once. She didn't believe that he would dare to gamble a second time. Your lives, I actually don't care at all, Gu Jiao coldly said. She stepped on the eunuch and with a crack, the head of the eunuch under her foot tilted, and he fell unconscious. The remaining two eunuchs were scared silly. What kind of situation was this? Did this brat kill old Chow? What happened to the weak scholar? Gu Jiao looked at the younger eunuch and the older eunuch. Out of the three of you, only one can live. Which one of you said it? I said it. I said it. I said it. The two of them said it in unison. I said it first. The younger eunuch took advantage of his young age, and reacted quickly. He opened his mouth and said, General Nangong is here. Xiao. A hidden weapon flew through the air. The sound was extremely loud, and its speed was very fast. It went straight for Gu Jiao's neck. Gu Jiao's ears moved. She turned her finger and shot out a Tang Hua needle. The Tang Hua needle hit the hidden weapon, and it hit a tree branch not far away. So it was just a stone. Gu Jiao indifferently moved her foot and turned around. Her cold eyes looked in the direction the hidden weapon came from. Unsurprisingly, she saw Nangongli using his qinggong to fly over. Nangongli lost an arm and his right sleeve was empty. However, even if he used his left hand, If Gu Jiao was hit by that attack, she would not feel good. Gu Jiao faced the famous general of Great Yin country, and her aura was not weak at all. The two of them were one zhang apart. She fearlessly walked forward a few steps and said with a smile that was not a smile, "Long time no see, General Nangong." Nangong Li's eyes tightened. "You are not Xiao Lulang. Who are you?" Gu Jiao had seen Nangong Li twice. Both times, he was in the dark and never showed himself. Gu Jiao crossed her hands and walked towards him. "Isn't General Nangong investigating me? Could it be that you still can't guess who I am?" She used her own voice. It was a woman. Nangong Li's pupils suddenly shrank. You are Gu Jiao." Nangong Li's entire person was unwell. He had chased after Xiao Lulang for so long, but in the end, it was this girl from the countryside. Nangong Li had investigated Xiao Heng and knew that he faked his death to leave the capital. He used Xiao Liulang's identity to hide his identity and return to the capital. At that time, he had brought a girl from the countryside with him. Her name was Gu Jiao. It was said that she was the daughter of a marquis. Nangong Li did not care. He was a general of great country. He did not even put the emperor of Zhao country in his eyes, let alone a daughter of a marquis. Therefore, he had never investigated Gu Jiao. The one who entered the palace was Gu Jiao, not Xiao Lulang. Then why would he chase after her? The risk was very high. Nangong Li turned around and left. "You want to leave?" Gu Jiao shot out a Tanghua needle. Nangong Li felt a chill on his back. He hurriedly flew up and stepped on a tree trunk. He flipped over and avoided the attack. "You're crazy." After Nangong Li landed and steadied himself, he angrily looked at Gu Jiao. "Do you want to die with me? In a moment, when His Majesty finds out that I trespassed into the palace, I will expose the fact that you are an impostor. You don't think that your end will be better than mine." Gu Jiao raised her hand and broke off a long branch from the top of her head. Using the branch as a spear, she coldly pointed at him. "Who wants to die with you? If I kill you, then no one will know that I am an impostor." Nangong Li suspected that he had misheard. What did this girl say? Kill him? In the palace? Where did she get the confidence to think that she could kill him? Even if he lost an arm, killing her would be as easy as killing an ant. However, there was still a risk of being discovered. For Xiao Lulang, taking this risk was worth it. For an imposter girl, there was no need. Not far away, the sound of footsteps could be heard. Nangong Li sneered. "Girl, there are already people coming from the side hall. Don't force me to kill you." "I know. So, I'll have to trouble you to die." Gu Jiao's foot tapped and she flew up. The spear in her hand was like a roaring dragon as it fiercely bit at Nangong Li. It was clearly just a branch, but it made her use the power of mountains and rivers. Nangong Li looked at the familiar spear technique, and his eyes almost instantly widened in disbelief. This is the Xianyuan family's spear technique. Digression, a new month has begun. We will continue to set sail. Guaranteed monthly tickets, let's go. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896428226/1073233931. HTML Genius will remember this site's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. Chapter 691. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all available here. Ah Chung, what were you practicing just now? It's the Xianyuan family's spear technique. My father created it himself. There are 7 styles in total. Do you want to learn it? That's inappropriate. After all, it's the Xianyuan family's spear technique. How can I, a member of the Nangong family, learn it privately? What's inappropriate about it? To go to war and kill the enemy. The Yen Kingdom will have an extra layer of protection if we have a strong general. Xianyuan Cheng had taught him this set of spear techniques without reservation. He treated it as a treasure, and was so excited that he couldn't sleep for days. He still remembered how Xianyuan Cheng had taught him, so he couldn't be mistaken. This girl was using the Xianyuan family's spear technique. But this was too strange. How could a girl from a lower country know the Xianyuan family's spear technique? If it was Xiao Luleng who knew it, he would be shocked, but at least there was some evidence. After all, Xiao Luleng and the Xianyuan family were inextricably linked. Once the Xianyuan family appeared, all ghosts would submit. This meant that even the ghosts of purgatory were afraid of the Xianyuan family. How could the living be their opponent? Nangongli clearly understood that this girl was still wet behind the ears. So what if she used the Xianyuan family's spear technique? It wasn't the real Xianyuan family. But Nangongli's heart instinctively surged with fear. He was distracted. And in this distraction, the spear pierced his right thigh. After all, it wasn't a real spear, so it didn't pierce through him. But even so, his thigh was severely paralyzed. The boy's gaze was like a knife, and his murderous aura was like a wolf. In an instant, Nangongli felt a familiar fighting spirit. It was the blood of the Xianyuan family. Nangongli almost forgot to counterattack until he regained his senses, and felt a sharp pain in his thigh. He used his sword to deflect Gu Jiao's spear. If it was said that he still had a trace of a fluke, and thought that this girl was not using the real Xianyuan spear art, then he was completely sure now. But that was even stranger, wasn't it? The people of the Xianyuan family were all dead. Who did this girl steal the spear technique from? It couldn't be that this lass had snuck into the Nangong residence and was hiding beside him, secretly watching him practice martial arts, right? No, he hadn't practiced the Xianyuan family's spear techniques for more than 10 years. It wasn't that he didn't want to learn it, nor was it that the Xianyuan family's spear techniques weren't powerful enough. It was precisely because they were too powerful that very few people other than the Xianyuan family could learn them. This spear technique had extremely high requirements for speed and strength, but it didn't have high requirements for inner strength. People with strong inner strength would often unconsciously use inner strength when making a move, but this spear technique created by Xianyuan Li required the practitioner to store all of their inner strength into their dantian. Collecting is always harder than letting go. If he was not careful, his dantian would be damaged. Apart from the group of perverts from the Xianyuan family, no normal person would be able to endure the pain of having their dantian filled with inner strength. This was also the reason why he had given up on this spear technique back then. He had once lamented that Xianyuan Cheng had done it on purpose. The reason why he had generously taught him the spear technique was because he would not be able to learn it no matter what. But how did a little girl learn it? Nangongli's mind was in a mess. Today's events had happened one after another, all of them exceeding his expectations. Second move. Gu Jiao spun around. Her long spear was like a knife, bringing with it a domineering aura as it fiercely chopped towards Nangongli. If this was a real long spear, Nangongli did not doubt that he would have been cut in half by this little girl. What a vicious little girl. Nangongli chopped off Gu Jiao's spearhead with one slash. Anyway, it wasn't a real red tasseled spear. Even if you cut off a part of it, I still have a large part. If there was no spearhead, then it would be a spearhead. Furthermore, Nangongli realized that he had been tricked after cutting it. This little girl wasn't here to take his life. She had purposely moved the branch by an inch, causing it to be uneven even though he had shaved off a part of it. He had shaved off a spearhead for her. Gu Jiao looked at her weapon with satisfaction, the corners of her lips curling up as she said, "Now it's not round and blunt anymore." Nangongli fiercely choked. Is this how you use the Xianyuan family's spear techniques? Meet ghosts, kill ghosts. Meet gods, kill gods. Meet gods, kill gods. How can you use it so indecently? The sound of footsteps came closer and closer. It seems that I have to end this battle as soon as possible. The shock that this little girl brought to him was over. Now he had to use his full strength to fight. Nangongli coldly snorted. The last time I used my full strength was when I fought with Xianyuan Cheng, little girl. Gu Jiao interrupted him. Nonsense, when you were chased by Changjing, When did you not use your full strength? If you didn't use your full strength, how could you escape? Nangongli staggered and almost fell. Little girl. A soldier can be killed, but not humiliated. Don't I want my face? No, using all his strength to escape and using all his strength to kill were two different things. Chang Jing had cut off his arm because he had underestimated her. If they really stood on the stage, he wouldn't lose to Chang Jing. After he was injured, he couldn't fight Chang Jing head-on. Die, little girl. I don't care who you are or why you obtained this spear technique. Today you will die under this general's sword. Nangongli's body exploded with a terrifying killing intent. It wasn't like this little girl was the only one who knew the Xianyuan family's martial arts. He also knew it. He learned the Xianyuan family's inner strength and sword techniques. Now he would let this little girl see what true strength was. Nangongli's inner strength was like an invisible giant whirlpool, sweeping up all the dust and leaves on the ground. He gathered his inner strength in his left hand and pointed his sword at the sky. The sword energy was like a rainbow as it fiercely chopped down at Gu Jiao. Poochie! It was the sound of a sharp blade entering a body. Nangongli's lips curled up in satisfaction. But halfway through his smile froze. His sword had indeed pierced through Gu Jiao, but it had only pierced through her clothes. That sound just now was her spear, piercing through his body. Nangongli's eyes widened in disbelief. What just happened? How did this little girl do it? Gu Jiao kicked his chest. His body was pulled out from the spear and heavily flew out. Gu Jiao rubbed her wrist and said with some dissatisfaction, "It's my first time using this spear technique to kill someone, so I'm not very familiar with it. It took me so many stabs to finally hit you." Nangongli fell to the ground and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. It wasn't from injury, but from anger. 3 moves. Under this little girl's spear technique, he actually only lasted 3 moves. And this little girl was actually still not satisfied. Blood rapidly flowed out, and there was a pool of blood below him. She didn't know why, but this scene felt familiar to Gu Jiao. It was as if in some dream, there was also someone who fell in a pool of blood like this. Gu Jiao tilted her head in a strange manner, trying to find the familiar scene that flashed through her mind. She walked step by step towards Nangongli. Nangongli's life was rapidly flowing away and his consciousness began to blur. In a daze, he seemed to see Xianyuan Cheng holding a red tasseled spear and walking towards him with a cold expression. "Nangongli, I trusted you so much, but you shot me in the back. You also have a day like this?" "Sigh, Nangongli, I don't like Prince Jing and I don't want him to be my brother-in-law. Why don't you marry my sister?" "Sigh, why did you lose again? You're a big man and you can't beat my sister." "Nangongli, hang in there. We'll reach the medical hall soon. Who told you to pounce on me just now? I can dodge it myself. Howard, come here. He will be your playmate from now on. His name is Nangongli. Can he take a beating? If not, I don't want him." Nangongli slowly closed his eyes that were filled with blood. It was said that before a person died, they would see the person they cared about the most and think of the things they cared about the most. He met Xianyuan Cheng when he was 3 years old, but he couldn't get rid of him. "Xianyuan Cheng, you really are a thorn in my heart." Gu Jiao squatted down and looked at Nangongli, muttering to himself with a dumbfounded expression. Nangongli looked at the blurry shadow in front of him with a pale face. The shadow gradually overlapped with the figure in his mind, forming the appearance of a young Xianyuan Cheng. He coughed up blood and laughed out loud while trembling. "Xianyuan Hao. He used Xianyuan Cheng's name when he was young. Perhaps it was because his childhood was the most innocent and sincere. I do deserve to die. I betrayed you, betrayed the Xianyuan family. My death is not regrettable. You came to me for revenge. I'm not surprised, and there's nothing to feel wronged. But you really think that the Nangong family did all those things? You're wrong. Ha ha ha. You're very wrong. The Nangong family can't even be considered as an accomplice. They're just a hunting dog that wants a piece of fat meat." He used the last of his strength and arched his body. His bloodstained hand grabbed Gu Jiao's collar tightly. "The person who really harmed the Xianyuan family is digression. Do you have a monthly ticket for me to secretly add a new chapter?" The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/1073210063. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. Chapter 692. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are available here. Lulang. Lulang, where did you go? Lulang. It was Mu Chuan's voice. Gu Jiao had been gone for too long. Mu Chuan waited for her for a long time, so he went out to look for her with Zhao Wei, Yuan Shao, and the others. Along with them was a little palace made from Zhanghe Palace. This was a small courtyard in Zhanghe Palace. Usually no one would come here. Other than a small wooden hut where sweeping tools were placed, there was only a high wall and a few big trees. At this time, Gu Jiao was squatting under a big tree near the high wall. In front of her was a man lying in a pool of blood. Behind her, there were 3 unconscious eunuchs lying near the small wooden hut. What's going on? Yuan Shao asked, dumbfounded. Lulang. Mu Chuan strode over. Yuan Shao and Zhao Wei also quickly followed. When they passed by the small wooden hut, they coincidentally looked at the 3 eunuchs lying on the ground. Yuan Shao shook his head at the 2 of them. He could feel that the 3 eunuchs were no longer breathing. Zhao Wei looked worriedly at the little figure who was squatting on the ground, drawing circles or doing something else. Lulang will be okay, right? Is he injured or scared out of his wits? At first glance, it was obvious that this was a terrible murder scene. What kind of normal person would squat there? Even if they didn't run away, they should hide far away to avoid any involvement, right? The 3 of them quickly came to Xiao Liulang's side. Xiao Lulang was on the left, while Yuan Shao and Zhao Wei were on the right. Zhao Wei felt that he was too far away from Xiao Lulang, so he simply bypassed the man on the ground and came to the opposite side of Gu Jiao. The little palace maid who had come with them had already gone to call for help. Lulang, are you okay? The 3 of them asked in unison. After practicing bowing together for a long time, the tacit understanding between them had improved. Gu Jiao said, "Oh, it's okay." Among the 3 of them, only Mu Chuan had seen Nangong Li before. Unfortunately, Nangong Li's face was covered in blood and dirt, and his face was hard to recognize. In addition, Mu Chuan was so worried about Xiao Lulang that he did not recognize him. Mu Chuan frowned and asked, "What's going on?" Gu Jiao answered honestly he was killed. Mu Chuan looked at Gu Jiao in confusion. "Then why are you squatting here? Wait to be arrested as a murderer?" "I am the murderer," Gu Jiao said. "My legs are numb." He was really numb and couldn't get up. Mu Chuan, Yuan Shao, Zhao Wei. Mu Chuan and Yuan Shao each stretched out a hand to support Gu Jiao. On the other side, the little palace maid brought the eunuch in charge of Zhanghe Hall over. It was Li Sandy, and there were a few palace guards following behind him. They were not the imperial guards. Only the emperor had the right to command the imperial guards. At this moment, the emperor was in court in the throne room, so Li Sandy had not reported it yet. Li Sandy immediately saw the students from Tianqiong Academy. His gaze fell on Gu Jiao's lapel. Mu Chuan and the others followed his gaze, and their minds buzzed. Oh my god! Why was there a bloody handprint on Liulang's lapel? Just now Gu Jiao was squatting there and hugging her knees. Her lapel was blocked, so they did not immediately notice the bloody handprint. Nangong Li had left it on her lapel when he grabbed her lapel to leave his last words. According to Gu Jiao's original plan, she would run away as soon as Nangong Li breathed his last. It didn't matter if her lapel was dirty, because she was wearing an extra layer underneath. However, her legs were numb. Plan A was to announce her death. Fortunately, she was quick-witted and came up with Plan B. Next, they executed Plan B. The little palace maid had already reported the situation to Li Sandy. Li Sandy knew that Mu Chuan and the other two came later. At that time, only Xiao Lulang was at the crime scene. Li Sandy confirmed the identities of the 3 eunuchs. The young eunuch's surname was Hu. Everyone called him Mustache. The other 2 eunuchs were called Tong Chen and Wei Shi. The 2 of them were not eunuchs working in Zhanghe Palace. They were from the catering department of the 12 supervisors. The catering department was in charge of the imperial cuisine, palace food, banquets, and other matters. Due to their special functions, the 12 supervisors had the right to enter the 3 main halls. Today, the 2 of them came to inquire about the monarch's lunch. But didn't the 2 of them leave after asking? Why were they killed here? What was even stranger was that there were gunny sacks and ropes on the ground. What were they doing? Are you sure they were killed? Li Sandy asked the palace guards. The 3 of them nodded. They were very sure. Gu Jiao looked at Li Sandy and the others. The deaths of the 3 eunuchs had nothing to do with her. They were accidentally killed by Nangong Li's internal energy. Li Sandy went to look at the man under the tree. Compared to the 3 eunuchs, this man's death was more tragic. His chest was pierced by a sharpened branch. The other party did not even take the murder weapon away. They just arrogantly left it at the scene. Li Sandy had a premonition of the seriousness of the matter. He was the eunuch in charge of Zhanghe Palace. A murder happened under his watch. No matter how he looked at it, it was his negligence. He did not understand. The imperial palace was heavily guarded. Who would have the guts to cause trouble in the imperial palace? Didn't you see anyone suspicious? He asked the guards who were accompanying him. The guards shook their heads. Gu Jiao was not surprised. The palace was heavily guarded, but for a master like Nangong Li, it was not too difficult to avoid being seen. In addition, Nangong Li probably knew the shifts and patrols of the palace guards like the back of his hand. That was why he was able to take advantage of the loophole. Nangong Li should have carefully chosen the location of the murder. It was completely a blind spot of Zhanghe Palace. Li Sandy finally came in front of Nangong Li. This time he carefully looked at Nangong Li's face. The more he looked, the more he felt that something was wrong. He took out a handkerchief and wiped off the blood on Nangong Li's face. Then he heard a cry of surprise and stood up. Eunuchly, the guards thought that this person had come back to life and rushed over to protect Li Sandy. But when they saw the face that had been wiped off the blood, they showed the same shocked expression as Li Sandy. This was a serious matter. Li Sandy immediately asked Gu Jiao about the specific situation. Who was the murderer? What had happened? What was the bloody handprint on his lapel? I'm not sure. I didn't see it. When I came, the other 3 were already dead. This one was still breathing. I know a little about medicine, so I wanted to save him. He grabbed my lapel as if he wanted to tell me who the murderer was. Unfortunately, he died before he could finish. Gu Jiao said calmly. Her expression was very magnanimous, without a trace of guilt. Mu Chuan quickly said, I can testify. Xiao Lulang really knows medicine. Zhao Wei agreed. Yes. We can all testify. On the day of our duel with Pingyang Academy, the students of Black Bamboo Academy and Songshan Academy fought fiercely. In the end, the walls of the attic collapsed. Xiao Lulang was there to save them. The deans were also there. If you don't believe me, you can send someone to ask. Yuan Xiao added. There's also Anguagong. Xiao Lulang treated Anguagong's illness. In fact, Gu Jiao's knowledge of medicine and Gu Jiao saving Nangong Li's life did not necessarily have a causal relationship. However, as long as it was proven that her medical skills were real, her action of staying to save the injured was valid. If they wanted to overturn this fact, they had to find strong enough evidence. From the bloody handprint on her body, there were only 2 possibilities for her to appear here. She could either save someone or kill someone. There was already a motive to save someone. She was a doctor and had a good heart. She would not leave someone to die. It was hard to say the motive for killing someone. Mu Chuan said, Xiao Lulang is not from Yin Kingdom. He has only been in Chengdu for a month. He did not know General Nangong or the 3 eunuchs. Why would he kill them? Maybe he was ordered by someone? A guard guessed. Mu Chuan laughed. Ordered General Nangong to sneak into His Majesty's Zhanghe Palace? Or ordered the 3 eunuchs to line up here and wait for him to kill them? Yes, the appearance of the 4 eunuchs here was indeed a big doubt in the case. No matter how they looked at it, Xiao Lulang did not have the ability to get all 4 of them here. Mu Chuan continued. The most important thing is that General Nangong is highly skilled in martial arts. Xiao Lulang had not left for long. Do you think that a student from Tianqiong Academy could kill the famous General Nangong of Yan Kingdom in such a short time with a branch? Mu Chuan's words struck a chord in their hearts. Yes, putting aside the motive and the timing of the crime, it was ridiculous that a student from a lower country could kill a famous general of a higher country. However, it was not enough for Li Sandy to believe it. It was related to General Nangong, so the king had to believe it too. Li Sandy personally went to wait outside the throne room. When the king arrived, he reported to him about what happened in the Zhanghe Palace. The king's face turned ugly. Li Sandy knelt on the ground. He was so scared that his back was soaked in cold sweat. There were many suspicious points in this case. The first one was why Nangong Li sneaked into the palace. In fact, this crime alone was enough for the king to sentence him to death. However, it was one thing to be sentenced to death by the king, but it was another story to be killed by someone else. Zhang Dequan. This servant is here. Call the Supreme Court Minister and the Minister of Justice here. Yes. The king wanted to thoroughly investigate this case. The king continued. Also, take that student to the imperial prison and torture him. There were 49 types of torture in the imperial prison. There was nothing that couldn't be asked. If the student lied, the imperial prison would ask the truth. If he endured all the punishments, the king would not pursue the matter no matter what the truth was. The king had said that as long as he endured all the torture in the imperial prison, he would be released on the spot even if he was guilty. Unfortunately, no one had succeeded so far. There were many who died halfway through the torture. Zhang Dequan first sent people to the Ministry of Justice and the Supreme Court. Then he personally went to escort Gu Jiao. After a while, he returned to the main hall of the Zhanghe Palace. His expression was a bit complicated. The king sat behind the desk and glanced at him. What's wrong? Zhang Dequan said in a dilemma. He wasn't taken to the imperial prison. The king closed his eyes to rest. He committed suicide? Zhang Dequan said. No. The king said indifferently. Then he confessed. Not really. Zhang Dequan said embarrassedly. He was taken away by the young princess. The young princess said that the student was her teacher. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all the novels that can't be found online here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964226/1073033941. HTML Genius memorized this site's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. Chapter 693. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that cannot be found on the internet are all available here. The king was a swift and decisive person. When he said that he wanted the young princess to start her education, he immediately sent her to the Imperial Academy. After entering through the Meridian Gate, the first thing she saw was the throne room, followed by the Zhanghe Hall and the Baohe Hall. The Imperial Academy was in the Baohe Hall. The students in the Imperial Academy were all members of the royal family. Everyone was much older than the young princess. Although the teachers taught in batches, it was really difficult for the 4-year-old princess to sit obediently and listen to the heavenly books for the entire morning. Thus, once school was over, she could not wait to find the king. She did not want to go to school anymore. After the king finished his court session, he would rest or read some memorials in the Zhanghe Hall. At that time, the young princess thought that the king had finished his court session and hurried to the Zhanghe Hall to look for him. Unexpectedly, she did not see the king. Instead, she saw Gu Jiao, who was taken away by Zhang Dequan. The young princess's eyes lit up. "Teacher, why are you in the palace? Are you here to teach me? Quick, quick, take me away. I don't want to go to the imperial tutor's class anymore." Then the young princess decisively took her away. Zhang Dequan did not dare to use violence in front of the young princess. After all, if he scared the young princess and made her cry, the king would behead him. After Zhang Dequan finished telling the whole story, he stood there quietly like a cicada in winter. The study was very quiet. It was so quiet that it felt like there was an invisible pressure on Zhang Dequan's head. Zhang Dequan suddenly felt that he was going to die soon. "Uncle, Your Majesty." A cute little head popped in from outside the door. The king slowly opened his eyes. The young princess struggled to cross the threshold that was even taller than her calf. She had a high status in the family, and usually considered herself as an elder. She was dignified and elegant. She stopped doing things like jumping around after she was 2 years old. Today, however, she was like an impatient little rabbit as she skipped over to the king's side. She grabbed the king's sleeves with her 2 small hands and said in a childish voice, "Your Majesty, uncle, can I ride a horse with my teacher?" Lingyu and the others said that I can only ride a horse if Uncle His Majesty agrees. Lingyu and the others were the palace maids who took care of the young princess. The monarch said, "I thought you didn't dare to ride a horse?" The young princess said confidently, I will dare to do it if I learn it." The monarch looked at the little fellow and said, "How about I ask Erhan to teach you how to ride a horse? Ask Erhan to give you a small black wind mount." The black wind mount was a precious horse that everyone envied, and the little black wind mount was even more precious. However, the young commandery princess was not interested in the black wind cavalry at all. She asked in surprise, "You want to change my teacher?" Without waiting for the king to say anything, she looked at the king with an incomparably hurt expression and questioned him from the depths of her soul. "Why?" "Very good. You are the second person who dares to question the monarch like this. The first was Xian Yuanli, he is already dead." Zhang Dequan broke out in cold sweat for the young princess. But soon, he realized that he was too naive. He should be the one breaking out in cold sweat. Seeing that the monarch did not answer, the young princess pouted her lips and her eyes became filled with grievance. In the next second, she took a deep breath and raised her head. Her 2 small arms fluttered behind her back as she burst into tears. Zhang Dequan saw that the monarch's dragon body trembled a little. When the young princess cried, it would definitely shock the heavens and earth, make ghosts and gods weep, and cause the mountains to collapse and the earth to crack. It could be said that with the strength of one person, she had the strength of thousands of soldiers and horses. If it was not for the fact that the Yen Kingdom's mad monarch could not handle anything, one of the things that happened would definitely be the young princess crying. Therefore, it was not difficult to understand why the monarch had ordered the people who made the young princess cry to be killed. "I won't change your teacher, I won't change him." The monarch's face darkened. He was defeated by his little niece's invincible killing move. The young princess stopped crying in a second and bowed in a dignified manner. She raised her small chin victoriously and said, "Thank you, Your Majesty. Then I will go and find my teacher to ride a horse." She lifted her small skirt and jumped out like a little rabbit. Because of the unknown assassin in the palace was worried that it would threaten the monarch's safety. The palace strengthened its security, and the meeting with the monarch could only be temporarily cancelled. However, when the monarch came from the throne room, except for Gu Jiao, who was taken away by the young princess, Wu Fuzi and the others were lucky enough to see the monarch's face. For them, it was already a blessing to be able to see the monarch in such a close distance in their lifetime. When they went back, they could still brag about it for a few taels of silver. However, when they thought about Nangong Li, they could not help but feel a little scared. They actually encountered a murder case, and Lulang was also involved. He was almost taken away as the murderer. Fortunately, The young princess appeared in time. Wu Fuzi rubbed his chest that was still very nervous at this moment. He looked at Gu Jiao helplessly and said, "Why do I feel that since I met you, my life has become so exciting? Taming the Horse King was exciting, competing in bowls was exciting, and even entering the palace was so exciting." Wu Fuzi said bitterly, "Do you know that I was almost scared to death by you just now?" Gu Jiao. Wu Fuzi. You guys. Who do you think entered the palace to kill General Nangong? Yuan Shao asked. Shu, lower your voice. Mu Chuan lowered his voice and said, Lu Lang is the only eyewitness. Even if he didn't see anything, what if the murderer thinks that he saw it? Or what if he thinks that Nangong Li told Lu Lang the murderer's name before he died? Yuan Shao was shocked and covered his mouth. I haven't thought about this. According to this, before the murderer is caught, won't Lu Lang be in danger? Wu Fuzi thought deeply and nodded seriously. I agree with Mu Chuan. After the news in the palace spreads, the murderer may harm Lu Lang. Lu Lang, I'll go to your house to pick you up for school these few days. Gu Jiao. I'm the murderer, thank you. Zhao Wei sighed. The Supreme Court and the Ministry of Justice are both investigating the case. I hope they can find something soon. Otherwise, if the murderer is always at large, Lu Lang won't be able to live in peace. Mu Chuan and Yuan Shao nodded in unison. Wu Fuzi didn't say anything. Gu Jiao looked at them and asked, General Nangong is dead. Are you all sad? Zhao Wei said, General Nangong is the heir of the Nangong family. He's a famous general in the Yan Kingdom. It's sad to think that he died in the palace. What a pitiful situation. Gu Jiao thought of the words that Nangong Li said before he died when he hallucinated. If what he said was true, then there was another story behind the Xianyuan family's rebellion. Moreover, the Xianyuan family shouldn't have been defeated. It was Nangong Li who stabbed Xianyuan Cheng in the back. Nangong Li betrayed his childhood friend, and the Xianyuan family that promoted the Nangong family. Most people didn't know anything about it. The public opinion was already biased towards the winning side. Otherwise, why would they say that the winner was king and the loser was in the wrong? The Xianyuan family rebelled, and everyone had the right to punish them. However, the Nangong family who betrayed the Xianyuan family became the heroes of the world. They were interrogated by the Ministry of Justice and the Supreme Court when they were in the palace. Therefore, they returned to the city a little later. It was already dark when they arrived at the academy. Wu Fuzi asked Mu Chuan and the others to return to their dormitory first. Lu Lang, I'll send you back. No need. My house is very close. I can go back by myself. No, I'm worried. Wu Fuzi insisted. Gu Jiao sighed. Okay. Wu Fuzi sent Gu Jiao back to the rented alley in a carriage. Gu Jiao jumped off the carriage. I'm home. Wu Fuzi, you can go back without worry. Wu Fuzi lifted the curtain and paused. You must be careful these few days. I think you should move to the academy. There are guards in the academy and I'm here too. Gu Jiao said, I'll think about it. If she didn't say so, Gu Jiao was worried that Wu Fuzi would dawdle with her until dawn. Wu Fuzi got a satisfactory answer and got on the carriage to go back. Just as Gu Jiao turned around and was about to open the door of the courtyard, a long sword was pressed against her neck from behind. The cold blade reflected a cold light in the dark night and reflected in Gu Jiao's cold and calm eyes. Gu Jiao glanced at the sword with the corner of her eyes. Who are you? Mu Qingqin's cold voice sounded behind Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao turned around and looked at him without blinking. You're back in the capital? Just now. Mu Qingqin looked at Gu Jiao with a complicated expression. I heard about what happened in the palace. Did you kill Nangong Li? Last time I saw you being chased by Nangong Li on the street, I hid you in the carriage. When I asked you what happened, you told me that you threw a stone at Nangong Li, so he chased you. You vented your anger on him because his son, Nangong Lin, played dirty on the boxing field and deliberately wanted to frame you. I asked you how you recognized him as Nangong Lin's father. You said you heard the servants call him General Nangong. I believed all of it. But how do you explain what happened in the palace today? You told them that you didn't know Nangong Li. You were lying. You've been lying all along. Tell me, did you kill Nangong Li? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896428226/10730326. HTML Genius memorized the website address in a second. www.zhhbqg.com Bkuj mobile reading website. Chapter 694. Please scan the QR code below to download the app for more exciting content. The novel will be updated more quickly. Millions of novels will be read for free. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found on the internet here. No. Gu Jiao denied it. Mu Qingchen looked at her coldly, trying to see if there was a trace of guilt in her eyes. However, to his disappointment, Mu Qingchen didn't see anything. If Gu Jiao was asked to play the role of love and hate, she would probably be dazzling. However, she didn't feel guilty because she was acting as herself. Flaw. It was impossible. However, whether Gu Jiao felt guilty or not was different from whether Mu Qingchen believed it or not. Mu Qingchen was not as gullible as Li Sandy. There was no logical blind spot in his thinking that could be led at will. He had his own inference and would not be affected by Gu Jiao. He clenched the hilt of his sword and said with cold eyes, "You won't save Nan Gongli. There is only one possibility for you to be at the scene. You killed him." Mu Qingchen had been with his classmate for a long time. Although he didn't know him well, he could tell that he was not a person who would repay evil with good. Since he had a grudge with Nan Gongli, how could he save him at the risk of being regarded as a killer? It was his classmate's mercy that he didn't stab Nan Gongli in the back. Gu Jiao spread her hands and said, "Whatever you say." Mu Qingchen kept clenching the hilt of his sword. His anger had reached a certain peak. In fact, he couldn't tell what he was angry about. He was simply angry that he had done evil in Chengdu and assassinated a famous general of the Yan kingdom. Or he was angry that he had been hiding a lot from him, and had never been honest with him. "Who are you? What's your purpose in the Yan kingdom?" Gu Jiao didn't say anything. Mu Qingchen was even angrier. Compared to quarreling with him and asking him why he didn't believe him, Gu Jiao's attitude of not wanting to say anything was the most maddening. Mu Qingchen gritted his teeth and said, "Why don't you say anything? Do you admit it?" Gu Jiao looked at him and said calmly, "If there's nothing else, I'll go in first. If you want to fight, do it another day. I don't want to fight in front of my house." With that, Gu Jiao didn't even look at the sword against her neck. She turned around and pushed open the door. Mu Qingchen said coldly, "Stop right there. If you don't make yourself clear today, don't blame me for making a move on you." Gu Jiao ignored him. Gu Jiao had already pushed open the courtyard door. Mu Qingchen was infuriated when he saw Gu Jiao turning a deaf ear to his threat. He raised his sword and stabbed at Gu Jiao's back. Gu Jiao didn't want to fight with Mu Qingchen, so she just dodged to one side. However, Mu Qingchen was determined to force Gu Jiao to make a move. He quickly made his second move. At this moment, a series of hurried footsteps came from the courtyard and came to the door. "Jiao Jiao, are you back?" Creak. The courtyard door was opened, and little Jing Kong's little head popped out. Mu Qingchen's eyes flickered, and he quickly withdrew his sword. However, there was still a trace of sword chi that he couldn't retract in time. The courtyard door was only opened a crack. If he pulled her out, she would be injured. If he pushed her in, she would fall down. In a flash, Gu Jiao stepped forward and bent down to protect little Jing Kong, blocking the sword chi. Mu Qingchen didn't intend to kill Gu Jiao. Besides, he had already absorbed most of the sword chi. It was just a wisp of remnant sword chi. Even so, Gu Jiao's back was still cut open. Her clothes were torn, revealing a small piece of her smooth skin, and a circle of cloth wrapped tightly around her chest. Mu Qingchen was slightly stunned. He only felt that the small piece of skin was dazzling. He didn't have time to think about what the circle of cloth wrapped around Gu Jiao's body was. He turned around, and his mind buzzed for some reason. Little Jing Kong didn't see Mu Qingchen outside the door. He thought that only Gu Jiao was back. He wanted to call out Jiao Jiao, but Gu Jiao raised her index finger and pressed it gently on his little mouth. Mu Qingchen wanted to turn around, but he somehow restrained himself. He squeezed the long sword in his hand and said in a low voice, "I'll find out the truth and evidence. If it's really you, I won't let it go." After that, he held the sword and stepped into the night with a heavy gaze. Gu Jiao closed the courtyard door and didn't let little Jing Kong see her back. Otherwise, he would be worried again. Little Jing Kong tilted his head and said, "Jiao Jiao, who was outside just now? I didn't understand what he said." "It's nothing. A classmate who sent me back." Gu Jiao touched his little head and asked, "Why are you here?" Little Jing Kong said, "The academy is on holiday. My brother-in-law sent me here." Gu Jiao asked, "Your brother-in-law is here too?" Little Jing Kong shook his head and said, "He was here at noon, but he went out now. He said he'll pick me up tomorrow, or Brother Qingfeng will pick me up." Xiao Heng must have something important to do since he sent little Jing Kong here. Gu Jiao guessed right. Xiao Heng did go to do something. Gu Qingfeng was there too. Xiao Heng first sent little Jing Kong to Gu Jiao and handed him over to Mistress Nan and Master Lu. Then he went to Tianxiang Pavilion and returned to the inner city with Gu Qingfeng. Gu Jiao didn't tell anyone about her assassination plan in the Imperial Palace, but Xiao Heng could guess it. There were two people who knew Gu Jiao the best in the world. One was Gu Yan and the other was Xiao Heng. The moment Nan Gongli left the city to find Gu Jiao, the two of them had their eyes on him. Gu Qingfeng followed his carriage all the way. Xiao Heng first sent little Jing Kong to Mistress Nan and Master Lu. After Nan Gongli left Tianxiang Academy, he went straight to the Imperial Palace. Gu Qingfeng and Xiao Heng didn't dare to chase too close. Fortunately, Nan Gongli didn't dare to stop his carriage too close to the Imperial Palace. Nan Gongli contacted an Imperial Palace eunuch and sneaked into the Imperial Palace by hiding in a box of ingredients. Nan Gongli's bodyguard stayed in the carriage and waited. The news of Nan Gongli's death didn't spread out so quickly. It wasn't until evening that his bodyguard heard from passers-by that General Nan Gong was killed in the Imperial Palace. Others didn't know the inside story, but how could his bodyguard not know? Nan Gongli went to kill that student from Tianxiang Academy. If something happened to Nan Gongli, it must be that student who killed him. The bodyguard hurriedly drove the carriage to report to the Nan Gong family. It wasn't good to make a move on the street. Xiao Heng spread out the map of the inner city and said to Gu Qingfeng, "Go east." Gu Qingfeng drove the carriage and said, "Don't make a mistake." Xiao Heng said, "It can't be wrong." They passed through an alley to the east and coincidentally bumped into the carriage of his trusted bodyguard. The trusted bodyguard seemed to have noticed that he was being watched and turned around to pass through another alley. Xiao Heng looked in the direction of the alley and said, "Turn around and go to Nanyu Street." Finally, the two of them blocked the bodyguard at the corner of Nanyu Street. After getting rid of him, no one would know why Nan Gongli entered the Imperial Palace today. Nan Gongli's death caused an uproar in Chengdu. There were three major doubts about this matter. First, why did Nan Gongli appear in the Imperial Palace? There was no record of him entering the Imperial Palace. In other words, he sneaked into the Imperial Palace. The servants of the Nan Gong family said that he went out with a bodyguard named Lu Dong. The Ministry of Justice immediately sent people to search for this bodyguard named Lu Dong, but they found him dead on the street. He was stabbed in the vital gate by a hidden weapon and died in a single blow. The murderer obviously had a strong anti-reconnaissance ability. There were no clues left at the scene, and no witnesses were found nearby. The case was in a deadlock as soon as there was a breakthrough. The second biggest doubt was the three eunuchs who died at the scene of the crime. Two of the three eunuchs were from the Imperial Kitchen Department, and the other was from the Zhanghe Palace. The three of them didn't interact in private, nor were they close on the surface. It was unknown why they appeared there together. There were sacks and ropes beside them, and they looked like they were going to catch something. After the coroner's examination, he speculated that they were killed by Nan Gongli's internal force. Why can't it be the murderer's internal force? In the morgue, The Chancellor of the Supreme Court asked the coroner. The Chancellor of the Ministry of Justice was also there. He was also curious about this. The coroner said, "I've also examined General Nangong's body. General Nangong didn't have any internal injuries, so I boldly speculate that the murderer doesn't have internal force." The Chancellor of the Supreme Court frowned and said, "Without internal force, he could use a tree branch to kill the famous General Nangong." "Old man son, do you understand what you're saying? You didn't make a mistake, did you?" The coroner said, neither servile nor overbearing. "I've examined corpses for dozens of years. I don't dare say that I've never made a mistake. If you don't believe me, you can find another coroner to examine General Nangong's body." The Chancellor of the Supreme Court naturally found one. The result was the same as Old Man Sun's. If he didn't need to use internal force to kill General Nangong, then he didn't need to use internal force to kill the 3 eunuchs. Based on this logic, the coroner deduced that the internal force that killed the 3 eunuchs came from Nangong Li. Thus, the third suspicious point of the case appeared. Who could have killed Nangong Li so easily without using internal energy, or without using internal energy at all? The Chancellor of the Supreme Court, Yang Chong, and the Chancellor of the Ministry of Justice, Dong Wei, investigated for a day and a night without finding anything. The Chancellor of the Supreme Court, Yang Chong, said that Lu Dong is clearly the best breakthrough point. As long as we can ask him what Nangong Li did in the palace, the truth of the case will be easily solved. The Chancellor of the Ministry of Justice, Dong Wei, said, "He's already dead. There's no point in talking about this." The Supreme Court and the Ministry of Justice were both outside Duan Men's court. However, the Supreme Court was in the west and the Ministry of Justice was in the east. Seeing that the sky was about to brighten, it was impossible to go back home to rest. They could only go to the Yamen to change their clothes and prepare to go to court to report the situation of the case to the king. When they were about to go their separate ways, Yang Chong saw that Chancellor Dong was deep in thought. He couldn't help but ask, "What are you thinking about?" Chancellor Dong said, "I'm thinking who killed Nangong Li. And he was killed in the palace. This feeling is like what?" Yang Chong asked. Chancellor Dong shook his head. "I don't have any conclusive evidence. However, when I stood at the scene of the crime and looked at Nangong Li's body and the tree branch that was thrown at the scene, I seemed to feel a murderous desire for revenge." This was one of Chancellor Dong's abilities. He was a judge with a keen intuition for cases. His intuition was accurate in most cases. They had once caught a serial killer, but they also had no clue. However, one time, the killer and Chancellor Dong met on the street. With just one glance, Chancellor Dong pointed at the person and said, "He is the killer." Therefore, when Chancellor Dong said that the killer was out for revenge, Yang Chong didn't immediately deny it. Yang Chong said thoughtfully, "Did Nangong Li offend anyone?" Chancellor Dong said, "You should ask who among the people Nangong Li offended could easily kill him. Have you carefully observed the shape of the tree branch? Don't you think it looks like a spear?" Yang Chong recalled and nodded. "That's right. The front end is sharpened and the length is similar to a spear." Chancellor Dong said, "As far as I know, only the Xianyuan family spear technique can have such power without using internal energy." Yang Chong frowned. "You mean, Nangong Li was killed by the Xianyuan family? Everyone in the Xianyuan family is dead. The only one left is the former crown princess, who was also crippled of her martial arts. Your inference is not valid." Chancellor Dong pondered for a moment and said, "What if there is someone who is lucky enough to survive?" Yang Chong said with certainty, "There is no what if. Don't forget, all the bodies of the Xianyuan family were examined one by one. They were nailed to the coffins before they were carried away by Crown Prince Jing and his brother." Chancellor Dong said with a serious expression, "Xianyuan Chung. When I saw the murder weapon during the day, I thought of him for some reason." Yang Chong said with amusement, "He is even less likely to be the killer. Among all the men of the Xianyuan family, he died the most tragic death. He was nailed to the city gate tower by his own red-tasseled spear. Thousands of arrows pierced his heart and he died. His body was hung there for an entire month. Crown Prince Jing spent almost all of his family's wealth in exchange for the bodies of the Xian Yuan family's men. If there was a single survivor, Crown Prince Jing would not have to go to such lengths. Crown Prince Jing, the current Duke of Anghua. Yang Chang paused and patted Chancellor Dong's shoulder. He said earnestly, "Elder Dong, I understand that you were promoted by the Xian Yuan family in your early years. You have always been brooding over the fact that you did not plead for mercy for the Xian Yuan family. However, you should also understand that you personally took over the case. The Xian Yuan family did indeed rebel. As officials of the imperial court, you and I cannot be associated with traitors. We cannot sacrifice ourselves for the sake of righteousness. Today, when you mention the Xian Yuan family in front of me, I will pretend that I did not hear anything. When you are in front of His Majesty, you must keep your mouth shut. Do not offend His Majesty." Elder Yang. Chancellor Dong called out to him as he turned and walked towards the Supreme Court. Yang Chang turned back to look at him. "What is it?" Chancellor Dong's expression was complicated. "That incident back then, was it really not wrong?" Yang Chang asked. "What incident are you referring to?" Chancellor Dong said, "You know." Yang Chang's eyes darkened. He said seriously, "Elder Dong, you only need to remember that what the top 10 aristocratic families did was righteous. Nangong Li's death caused an uproar among the aristocratic families. Although Nangong Li was not the eldest son of the Nangong family, he was more outstanding than his elder brother. The Nangong family had always trained him as the successor. Who would have thought that he would be killed in the palace? The Nangong family was furious. He pressured the Ministry of Justice and the Supreme Court to find the murderer within 3 days. However, this was impossible. Not to mention that they did not have a clue now. Even if they had a clue, they would not be able to thoroughly investigate this murder case with great fanfare. That was because the emperor's birthday was coming. Everyone in Sheng City was busy celebrating the emperor's birthday. At this critical moment, if they caused a commotion about Nangong Li's murder case, wouldn't it bring bad luck to the emperor? Moreover, Nangong Li sneaked into the palace without permission, which more or less made the emperor unhappy. After the emperor's birthday, they would thoroughly investigate in a high-profile manner. Gu Jiao knew nothing about what happened in the imperial court. She went to the academy as usual. Mu Qingchen also came to class. He was still sitting in the second seat in the last row, close to the back door on the right. The first seat was Gu Jiao's seat. Everyone had been used to Mu Qingchen and Gu Jiao sitting at the same table, so no one felt strange when they saw him sitting there. Only Gu Jiao clearly felt that Mu Qingchen's aura had changed. He looked at Gu Jiao with a very guarded look. Gu Jiao sat down without changing her expression. Zhou Tong, who was sitting in the front row, turned around and looked at the two with a smile. "Sure enough, Lulang, you have a big reputation. As soon as you came back to class, young Master Qingchen also came." Yes, she had a big reputation, so big that the first young master of Sheng City personally came to monitor her. Mu Qingchen did not speak, but his aura was frighteningly cold. Zhou Tong shrank his neck and covered his face with a book. He whispered to Gu Jiao, "What's wrong with young Master Qingchen? Is he unhappy?" Gu Jiao thought to herself, "With your voice, half of the classroom can hear it. Why are you still covering your face with a book?" "You can ask him yourself," Gu Jiao said. Zhou Tong curled his lips. He did not dare to ask. Zhou Tong changed the topic. "Hey Lulang, did you go to the palace yesterday to see the king? Is the 10,000 taels worth it?" "What 10,000 taels?" Gu Jiao's focus was always on the gold. Zhou Tong said. "It's said that the prize for the second place is 10,000 taels. Even the servants of our academy said so." Gu Jiao took out the book from her bag. 1,000 taels. If it was 10,000 taels, she would have buried Mu Chuan alive. No, she also wanted to bury Mu Chuan alive now. Forget it. Since she had taken this opportunity to kill Nangong Li, she would bury him later. The king's birthday banquet was set for the 10th of June. All the officials of the imperial court and above, as well as the aristocratic families in Sheng City, had received invitations to the banquet. The day before the banquet, Gu Jiao heard the news she had been waiting for a long time. The state preceptor had returned to Shung City. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet can be found here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964286/1072846556. HTML Genius memorized the website address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikuga mobile reading website. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.